We're going to call the West Ada School Board meeting in order, and we'd ask everyone to stand with us. The first thing we always do is say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I don't know about you guys, but that's the first time we've had that loud of a pledge. It's kind of awesome. So, all right, so we've got a couple regular business items to take care of tonight. The first thing, trustees, that we need to do, we've amended the agenda within the 48 hours notice, so we need to approve the amended agenda. So the first action I would ask for is a motion to approve the amended agenda. Trustee Kofelt.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the amended agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the amended agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. All right, great. Dr. White, this is probably the biggest crowd you've ever had for a principal recommendation. So, well, you're up next. So, thank you.
Chairman Johnson, members of the board, and Dr. Reynolds. I am here to make the recommendation for the new principal at Pepper Ridge Elementary. But before I do so, I would like to formally thank the members of our interview committee at the site. The members of that interview committee were staff members, including Krista Poncia, Carly Lemica, Brittany Greenleaf, Megan Newbury, Dion Northrop, Teresa Plummer, Shauna Shepard, Nick Fowler, Lonnie Taylor, Kenny Prada Torp, and Greg Felton for the time and the effort they put into interviewing potential candidates for the principal position. I'd like to express appreciation also to Mr. Matt Mura for his dedicated service at Pepper Ridge as principal. His imprint will be felt for years to come. The interview committee and the executive team, and I would like to recommend Ms. Elisa Tuller as the new principal for Pepper Ridge Elementary. Elisa worked for the Polytechnic School, Boise, and West Ada School Districts. While in our district, she has taught keyboarding at Lake Hazel Middle School and 7th grade math at Sawtooth. In addition, she was in our intern program, working at both Prospect and Frontier, and she's been a vice principal at Meridian Middle School for the past 3 years. And she's joining us tonight. She's sitting right here by me.
Is she going to come speak?
I was waiting for the invitation.
Yes. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Chairman Johnson, Board of Trustees, Dr. Reynolds, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come speak tonight. I've been working in the West Ada School District for the past 11 years. I have 4 children who have attended West Ada schools and 2 that have graduated from West Ada high schools. I'm invested and committed to our district. I've spent the last 3 years at Meridian Middle School as an assistant principal, and I've walked alongside the best students and staff in the district. They've prepared me to continue my journey as an administrator. Tonight, I begin a new chapter. I'm ready to lead and support the students, staff, and families at Pepper Ridge Elementary. I'm humbled and blessed by this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. So usually we let the trustees kind of ask some questions or give some comments, if you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
All right, I'd open it up to the floor. You guys going to be quiet tonight? Trustee Kloppenstein.
I just want to say congratulations on this appointment. Very exciting.
Thank you.
Trustee Kofelt.
Yes, and congratulations. And just by chance, is yellow your favorite color?
It's my favorite.
Okay, how did they know? Very good. Okay.
Anything else? Well, when we get to the consent agenda here, we'll approve your hiring, I believe. And welcome to the principal. you're in my area, so I'm looking forward to seeing you more often, and congratulations. So
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, great. We have up next the consent agenda. And normally, I'm just going to kind of walk people through how this meeting works because I know a lot of people aren't here normally. So the consent agenda is all items, kind of regular business items that we just approve in one motion unless there is a trustee who feels something needs to come off and be discussed. So with that, I would open it up for a motion on the consent agenda or in any form or fashion. Trustee Buffy, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the board approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The consent agenda is approved 5-0. Thank you. All right. So now we're up to what I will call the fun part of our agenda.
I believe as point of order, did Clerk Newbold have any?
Oh,
yes.
thank you.
Beg your pardon.
Before I forget, thank you. Sorry. You can always interrupt me. Did you have any additions or amendments to the agenda or additions to the agenda?
Madam Chair, Trustees, Superintendent Reynolds, we have attached all the patron comments up until, I believe, 11:45 today, and we will attach the rest tomorrow. That's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And all of that information is available online as well. Thank you.
Correct.
All right. So we're coming up to the discussion portion, and I think Dr. Rannells and Mr. Heller are going to lead us through this. But I wanted to set the stage on why we're even having this discussion tonight, because about a month and a half ago, we said, I think we're going to just carry this mask policy through the end of the year. And we had intended on that. And then what happened was a trustee came and said, hey, I've been watching the city ordinance changes, I've been watching the CDC guidance, and said, do you think there's a potential for us to look at whether or not we keep the mask policy outdoors, or if we can maybe change the outdoor area of it? And so we said, okay, that's not a bad ask, let's see. So I asked the trustee to email Dr. Rannells, because this all has operational impact, and said, see what they say, see what administration says from an operational standpoint. And administration came back and said, you know what, we're going to look at that, and we'd like to just look at everything together. And so we have, tonight we're going to have Dr. Rannells and Mr. Heller present, as they've done an operational review and a safety review, what the administration recommendation is around potential mask revisions for West Ada School District. And so with that, I'd open it up for Dr. Rannells and Mr. Heller, I think, if I got that right.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Trustees. This certainly has been a great topic of investigation regarding the dress code requirement set by the board when we implemented our pandemic plan, especially with the changes with CDC and CDH, and in fact, the mayor of Boise updating her plan for the city. And we were notified late this afternoon that the governor has also moved us into stage 4 of the Rebound Idaho plan. So with that, I think it's important for the trustees to know we've done some considerable research and interviewing and questioning around the requirement for masks. We did consult with CDH, various health officials. We reviewed the new CDC guidelines, and all of them are still saying that masks should continue to be worn indoors except while eating, but may be optional for activities outdoors. In checking with other districts to see if masks are required indoors or outdoors, we were given the following information regarding a mask requirement from the 8 school districts around us: Nampa, Boise, Kuna, Valley View, Caldwell, Emmett, Mountain Home, and Middleton. And of those districts, 5 of them still require masks indoors, and 2 do not require masks at all. And 1 is actually, their board is meeting tonight to consider the same topic in terms of removing the requirement and allowing masks to be optional. We also looked at our data every day and a trend line as well. And from April 27th through May 10th, we were happy to see that we only had 15 confirmed cases district-wide, which is phenomenal. But we also had 921 students in quarantine for one reason or another. Many of those students who were in quarantine was not because of school-based exposures. It was either because of a confirmed case from a family gathering or an outing or something to that nature. We've received a great deal of input from parents and staff, and as you can imagine, there's no clear, definitive desire one way or the other. So when we look at our pandemic plan, we told parents and staff early on, and the board approved it, that the mask requirement would be in place until the end of the school year. Several of the families who contacted us reminded us of that and told us that they allowed their children to return to school believing that this expectation would remain in effect. Our students have not had the opportunity to be vaccinated, but we're happy to report that our staff has taken full advantage of the vaccination. The medical professionals we reached out to a second and a third time continued to strongly advise continuing this infection prevention measure indoors, but felt there was room for relaxing the requirement for outdoor activities. Central District Health still has West data in the yellow category. We don't anticipate being placed in the green category before school is out, but that certainly is something we should pay attention to. Even though numbers of confirmed cases in our district remain low, we still worry about the number of students who are required to quarantine due to school-based exposures or family exposures, especially if they're not wearing a mask, because that increases the number of days students would be out of school for the quarantine. After tonight, we only have a few weeks of school remaining, and we do not want to risk seeing the number of confirmed cases and students in quarantine increase. We do not want students to miss the final weeks of instruction, nor do we want to jeopardize the opportunities for students to participate in end-of-the-year activities, graduation, or district and state competitions scheduled for later in May. So at this time, our recommendations would be that for the remainder of the 2021 school year, that students will be required while indoors to wear a cloth face covering. Masks will be considered optional for outdoor activities, before school, after school, recess, lunch, physical education, outdoor classroom activities. And we think that is a very reasonable request to make of the board. Number two, during the summer months, we would ask that the board consider making masks optional for all school district activities, including summer school, summer intervention programs, and extracurricular activities. And that would allow us to monitor any changes in the spread of the virus. And then number three, we believe that the West Ada School District administration and trustees will want to look at that data and monitor that data and determine what requirements or expectations should be in effect for the 2021-22 school year during a board meeting prior to the new school year. And then lastly, the West Ada School District administration will continue to daily analyze the COVID-19 data dashboard to monitor changes in community spread and students and staff isolations. And Mr. Heller's here if the board has any other questions.
Great, and maybe just, I'm just going to kind of explain process, because process is such an important part for us. So we asked administration to give us the recommendations. The trustees have an opportunity now to ask some questions if they want. We'll go into the public comment period, and I'll talk through that when we get there. and then we'll come back into discussion so trustees can ask additional questions if they have any before we take any action tonight. So with that, we're at the point where there's some questions from trustees around the recommendation and discussion. It doesn't have to be just questions. It can be thoughts too, but yeah, I would open up the floor for the trustees. Trustee Klopfenstein.
Thank you very much. Is Mr. Heller available? Awesome. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Heller.
Good evening.
I just had a couple of questions. I just want to make sure I understand it correctly. Could you explain 0-day isolation and if that's in effect in the district?
Absolutely. So, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds. So, and I believe we sent this out a while back to you all regarding what's really called the quarantine release program that Central District Health has kind of put out for us to use. Essentially what that program allows is for students to leave quarantine and come to school on a daily basis if certain criteria are met. So if a student is a close contact of a COVID-19 positive individual, so they're close contacts with them in the classroom, and both of those individuals are wearing a mask, that close contact can continue to come to school during that 10 to 14 day quarantine period. If either of those two individuals are not wearing a mask when that close contact occurs, we cannot institute that quarantine release feature. So that would require, if they're students without a mask, that the student not wearing the mask would have to quarantine for that 10 to 14 days. And so when we refer to our concerns over students potentially missing instructional time, maybe having to quarantine during an athletic event, potentially even impacting things like graduation, it is purely because that quarantine release feature, when everybody's wearing a mask, does allow students to continue to do their activities and continue to attend in-person schooling during that quarantine period. And so that is in effect in the West Ada School District right now.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I was wondering, do you know by chance roughly how many people are under that program?
Well, if you look in our current data, I think we have 926 students over the last 2 weeks who have been in isolation. That does include students who are in that quarantine release program. Some of those students on that 926 have been required to go home because when that close contact occurred, maybe one person wasn't wearing a mask or the close contact occurred happened at a home event or whatever it might be. So there's very specific criteria that we have to follow to utilize that quarantine release program, and so some of those 926 students are students who fell under those criteria, but I can't tell you the exact number.
Excellent, thank you. And also, I just had one other question, if you wouldn't mind. Concerning the part of the district that's within the Boise school, or Boise city limits, if we released, if we went ahead and opened up the mask mandate today, would the city law require us to adhere to city law within the city boundaries, I guess?
I'm gonna take this one from Mr. Heller. We have it. We got an email. We actually got a legal opinion
thank
that
you.
our policy supersedes the city ordinance. So
It does. Okay.
yeah.
Excellent.
Yes,
Thank you. I
that's
just
correct.
wasn't sure. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I just didn't want you to have to take that one. Sorry.
Thank you.
I apologize if it didn't get shared with you. I was hoping it did. It got shared with everybody, but if it didn't, okay. So, any other questions for Mr. Heller? Trustee Ozuna.
I have one follow-up on that quarantine release program. What would you anticipate would be the increased number of quarantines if we didn't have a situation where the masks were mandatory?
So, Madam Chair, trustees, I hate to try to guess, but I will tell you that we had, before the quarantine release program was officially instituted, in a middle school classroom, where if you remember a middle school classroom, they go to 7 different class periods. And if they're sitting in that classroom with 28 to 30 other students, one positive case was taking out upwards of 35 students, taking out meaning having to go into quarantine. So the potential is that so now in that situation, those 35 students aren't going home. They're able to continue to go to class every day, continue to participate in their activities because they're wearing the mask. So potentially, I mean, of the 926, again, I wish I knew off the top of my head how many of those got to stay in school because of the the quarantine release feature, because that would help us maybe quantify that a little bit, but I can't say for sure. But I think we just know there will be some students who currently wouldn't have to miss instructional time that will have to miss instructional time. I worry about a close contact that occurs on June 8th and then causes a student not to be able to attend their in-person graduation. To me, we have 4 weeks left to try to get as much instructional time with our students as we possibly can, to try to finish off our school year as best as we possibly can for the events that we know matter to our families. I have a 5th grade daughter. I would love for her to be able to go to her 5th grade celebration moving into middle school. I would hate for her to not be able to attend that type of an activity. So for all of us, I think those things matter. We know they matter. We've heard all year how much those things matter. For us, we're very concerned about anything that would jeopardize, even if it's individual students' ability to participate in some of those last activities at the end of the year. So that's why the recommendations that we're making are being made.
Trustee, follow up?
One other question. Do we have the ability within our data for cases, school-based exposures that turn positive, to know which of those positives were in a situation where both students had a mask, or like at a lunch situation? Or can we dive into that deeper later?
We certainly can dive into that a little bit deeper. Where we struggle sometimes is things like, when did the exposure that turned into a positive, when did that really happen, right? What happened in the classroom where the masks were being worn versus now they're sitting next to each other in a lunch period? Even the best epidemiologists in the world will tell you it's going to be really hard to identify when exactly the positive case was transferred, right? So that's the challenge, so that we try to make some best educated guesses based on the information we have, but it is really difficult necessarily to pin down this is exactly when somebody was in close contact with somebody with the virus, and that we can say for sure that's where they contracted that virus, because there's all sorts of things that happen outside of our control during the school day, or outside of the school day, I should say.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Heller, maybe what we can look at, though, is a positive case where the child is actually on quarantine because they don't have a mask, and we can determine when there has been no mask and there's been a positive transmission,
Correct.
right? We can at least get that definitive of data.
Yes.
Okay. I had a question. Oh, sorry. Let me make sure you don't have any before I go. Okay. When we are doing the quarantine release program, students are allowed to come back to class even though they're on technically quarantine, because both students, positive case and non-positive case, were wearing a mask.
Correct.
What about sports? How does that impact their sports?
So, Madam Chair and trustees, for West Ada, we have implemented that those students can still participate in their extracurricular activities in that quarantine release program. That was a decision that we made based on speaking to lots of medical professionals who said, based on the fact that you have these close contacts who are wearing a mask, they are doing all these other safety mitigating measures, the risk was minimal for that student to continue to participate in after-school activities, and so we have allowed for those to continue in that quarantine release program, if both are wearing a mask.
Okay, thank you. And I want to make sure I'm real clear on my understanding. So it doesn't matter, but I'm just going to use myself and Trustee Ozuna as example. Trustee Ozuna says she's mask optional, and she's not going to wear hers, and I'm going to wear mine. Trustee Ozuna tests is positive. I'm with her, I'm wearing my mask. Because she's not, I still have to quarantine release, which means I lose my ability to play sports or go to graduation or do any extracurricular activities, even though I chose to wear my mask based on the way the quarantine release program works today.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there any other? Trustee Kofelt?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Heller. For clarification on the quarantine criteria, is that if someone tests positive or is exposed to someone that tests positive? Is that the criteria for it, or is it?
In general, typically, Trustee Kofelt, it is based on a positive case. So I've been tested positive, and now everybody that's within that 6 feet of me that's a close contact of me is now considered has to quarantine. And then with the quarantine release program, they're allowed to continue to go to school and do all those things if the mask remains.
Okay. Thank you.
Obviously, there's all sorts of other criteria that we have to do, including we have symptom checking throughout that quarantine period, but yes, that's the essential nature of that. Yep.
I just want to make it clear, I wasn't saying where Trustee Ozuna's policy sat when I, so, or mine,
Right.
for that matter. Is there any other questions or, Trustee Kofelt, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick follow-up. This question may have been asked, but is there any documentation of individuals that we have had in quarantine that have converted to positive?
Yes. Okay. Yes. We've had a number of students who have. Now, I will tell you, and this is what we continue to reflect, is that number still remains very, very low. Our students who are quarantining and then converting to positives, which to me is one of the most important data points that we can look at, are our close contacts converting to positives. That has been at a very, very low level, which is a great thing. That's what we want it to be. I think that's a testament in many ways because the teams in the buildings do such a fantastic job of quarantining, doing the investigations quickly, making decisions about what needs to happen quickly, so that there isn't potential additional spread. So it's been very, very good news all along as we come to those converting to positive numbers.
Just for clarification, though, that's with every student being required to wear masks indoors
Correct.
today.
That is correct.
And also, the quarantine release program's only been in play for a month.
Yeah, we piloted it at a handful of schools earlier, and then for the last month, it's been available to all schools to use. And so, all of our data comes with this understanding that all of our mitigating measures are part of why our data has been good in terms of any of that.
Yep, thank you. Is there any other questions, comments? We can have some after too, so, okay. Great.
Thank you.
Mr. Heller, thank you.
You bet,
And
thank you.
Dr. Reynolds, thank you for sharing the recommendation with us. All right, so we're going to get to the public testimony portion. And I know folks probably wanted, I know not everybody's going to get to testify. So one of the things we're going to do at the end is I'm just going to ask for a show of hands on which side you're on so we get at least the show in the room. We needed to have a definitive amount of public testimony time because we have a big agenda tonight, a whole bunch of things on it. And we also take testimony in multiple ways. So we take public testimony in the meeting. We've received a ton of emails. We've had public comments on our website. And we look at all of those pieces of information along with, I think what you heard from Dr. Reynolds and Mr. Heller is we look at CDC information from a national level, our Department of Health and Welfare from a state level, our Central District Health from a local level, and all those guide some of our decision making. And then we use our own data pretty specifically in our decision making. So I want to just kind of set that stage. And then I'm going to read kind of our protocols because it's in here and everybody when they signed up, but I don't know if you got a chance to all read them, so I want to read them out loud. So we ask that patrons only speak on the discussion items. So tonight the testimony has to be on the topic at hand. Open meeting law in Idaho doesn't require public comment. Accepting public comment is something that the board decides to do. And we do it, West Ada School Board did not always do this. In fact, when Trustee Ozuna and Trustee Kloppenstein came on the board, they actually opened it up for public testimony. So it's not something the West Ada School Board has done for a long time. The presiding officer, which is me, may interrupt or terminate statement when it's too lengthy, personally directed, repetitive, abusive, unprofessional, obscene, or irrelevant. The rights of employees, students, and others are protected by various laws and policies, and at public meetings, the Board of Trustees, no person may orally initiate charges or complaints against students or individual employees in the district. When you come to testify, please come to the podium to speak. Begin by stating your name and how you're associated to West Ada School District, so you can just say I have a kid in the school or anything like that. We're limiting the comments tonight to 2 minutes. I will tell you that's modeled after the Idaho legislature, which is 2 minutes, and also so we could get more people into the room tonight in the hour that we have. Please avoid answering questions from audience members, and all questions, we actually don't even ask questions of you, we just hear your testimony. We also ask, just for timing's sake, that I know you're probably going to hear some things you like and some things that you don't like. But we ask for everybody to just be respectful that each person has an opinion in the room and it's a valid one. And so we ask you to refrain from clapping or cheering or that kind of stuff. We're all just here to listen for this portion. And then you may not yield your time to another speaker. You get your time and we give it to you and then you take it and we go to the next person. Now, we have testimony sheets here with more people than we're going to be able to do. So I wanted to start us off. We're going to actually, since we know we have some folks who represent groups in the room, I would like to ask that we have those two folks, and so I'm going to call them up in that order first, because I think we'll get a broader sense of the public comment from those two individuals. So I'm going to ask Mr. David Benetti to come up first and Mr. Eric Teese to be ready for it to come up second. So with that, we'll get started. Oh, and then Mr. Stevens has a clock here, so you've got all of that good information right in front of you. So.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is David Benetti. I'm a parent of a 3rd grader and a 6th grader here in the West Ada School District, and I represent Smile West Ada, which is 1,715 parents, students, and teachers who want to see the smiles this year before the end of the year. Now, we want masks optional for the final 2 weeks of this school year, and we do support masks. We do believe they are effective. We just don't believe that they are worth the trade-offs and the costs they represent to our children, and that we as parents deserve a choice. So why now with so little time left in the year? Well, we believe it's important to do this now because, firstly, nothing magical is going to happen in August to make this decision any easier. There will still be variants, there will still be potential quarantine restrictions, so nothing is going to fundamentally change that will make that decision any easier. And we have the opportunity to do a dry run now so that we can learn and grow and prepare ourselves the best for our next year. We want to finish right so we can start right. And throughout this pandemic, this board, West Ada, has led the way. There were those who said we should never open. This board led the way and opened, and the kids benefited. There were those who said, don't move to K through 5 full-time instruction. All kinds of bad things are going to happen. This board led the way, and our students benefited. There were those who said, don't move to full-time instruction, all grades. It's going to be a disaster in April. This board led the way. They were wrong. You were right, and our kids benefited. You have the opportunity again to lead the way, to have an explosion of joy in this district like you have never seen, and to set us up for the best success next year, hope and optimism. Don't wait for a leader to make it happen. Be the leader. Lead us, and we will follow.
Thank you. Mr. Teese.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me up at the front of the list. I wasn't anticipating that. I don't actually have anything prepared. I was going to let other folks speak tonight. I think the biggest point, my biggest hang up in all of this is the idea that this entire year, our goal, and everybody's goal, and we've all had different ways of getting there, but our goal has been to get kids in classrooms and keep them there as much as possible so that they can benefit from the communities that are in those schools, they can benefit from the in-person instruction, they can benefit from their friends and the events that happen within those buildings day in and day out. And the most meaningful weeks of a school year are the last few weeks. And what's being asked to lift this face mask mandate and make it optional puts those last few weeks in the greatest risk of the entire year. And not because I think everybody's going to get sick, although there is a real risk out there, but because of our quarantine policies, those things that our medical professionals tell us we have to do to keep people safe and keep people in schools, including the 0-day quarantine, or I can't remember what the new name for it is. And failing to be able to implement that will cause hundreds of kids to miss out on those last few precious days of this year. And that's something that turns my stomach, thinking that we're going to ignore that and that we're just going to put that at risk after all of the work we've done this year to get kids in school where they can benefit from everything we provide them there. And so now that kids are there, let's not risk it in those last few weeks. And this concept that I've heard over and over again, that how we end this year is how we'll start next year isn't true. How we ended last year isn't how we started this year. What we were doing 3 months ago isn't what we're doing this month. What we've been focused on wholly all year is getting kids in school. Please don't mess that up now. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to alternate between the two sheets. And do we need to grab the last of the sheets over there before sorry, I caught you mid-water drink. So I'll wait just because I know you've probably got to take minutes for us on this. So, but if Megan Sabori can be prepared to speak next.
Hey guys.
Megan, I'm going to ask you to just wait so the clerk can, because I don't know, I'm looking at her to see if we have any minutes before are we okay to go, Sherry, or do you need us to wait? Okay, go ahead and say thank you.
Nice to put a face with the name, you guys. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am Megan Sabori. I have 3 boys in this district. They're all elementary school kids at Hunter Elementary. I signed up to be a sub this year so that I could help keep our schools open. And I'm not a teacher, and I never dreamed to be, but I did anyways. So I'm here to represent the teachers that I got to help this year and also our children and be a voice for them. Through Smile West Ada, there are a couple testimonies I'd like to read for you guys. This is for a teacher. I will keep their names anonymous at their request. From Zone 1, I'm a secondary teacher, union member, and parent of 2 children who attend West Ada schools. I would like the board to consider making changes to the mask policy for this school year and next. When the policy was first added to the dress code, information regarding COVID and our numbers were different. Now that our numbers have decreased and we have a vaccine, it is time to change the policy and let our students and staff breathe.
Megan, I'm going to stop you for just a second. Troy, will you pause us for just a sec on the timer? One of the things that the board can't do is accept anonymous public testimony. So,
okay.
If you can't give us the staff name, we probably have to miss that point. Okay.
The rest of them
sorry,
are okay?
it's just,
Okay.
it is a requirement.
So I will say that was from Amber Phillips in Zone 1.
Okay, thank you.
Then I have Carolyn Glover. She's a teacher in Zone 4. I'm a kindergarten teacher in West Ada. I would love to see my kids' smiles and for them to see mine. I feel that we have made it a safe environment for our schools, and it's time to move forward with returning to a mentally healthy environment too. This will also set us up for a great start to our school next year. And then the last one that I will read to you, perhaps. Brittany Major, she's also a teacher. Her zone is unknown. I'm a teacher in West Ada. We were not created to wear masks or live in fear every day. We were created to have relationships with other people, which is one of the most important things in education that has been taken away from us this year. Our lives are far too precious to waste them being scared and fearful. Our faith should be stronger than our desire to wear a mask. So I just also wanted to give my own personal testimony, being a sub in particularly my kids' school. And again, it is elementary school. It is hard for them to wear them the proper way. They're taking them off and they're eating next to each other for more than 20 minutes, right next to each other. So the masks, honestly, I don't know their efficacy as far as elementary school kids go. I'm not going to bring up data because you guys all have that at your fingertips. But I also know that there are a few teachers who have said to me that they won't even teach next year if this is like this. So please consider making masks optional for those that would like to have that choice for their children. Thank you.
Whoops, Angela Vol. Thank you. Angela, I know you and I have talked before, and I probably butchered your last name. I apologize. I recognize many names on these lists, by the way. So.
You've got it right, and I'm short. Let's hope I can get this down. Good evening, Chairperson, Trustee, and Dr. Reynolds. My name is Angela Vol. I'm a West Ada substitute, and most importantly, mother to an 11-year-old sixth grader in one of our middle schools. The face mask debate has torn our community in half. I have really struggled to find some sort of middle ground on where I stand. I have seen most students at the schools that I sub wearing their masks correctly, and they have had no issues following the rules surrounding them. The COVID-19 vaccine is now available to ages 12 and up. My daughter won't be able to receive her vaccine until the school year begins because of her late August birthday. One of the biggest issues this school year has been the constant change in policy. With only 5 weeks of school left, it is reckless to change the plan that's been agreed to. The current dress code in the student handbook is that face masks are required. Please stop changing the rules on us. While I would prefer to continue the mask mandate until all students in all grade levels have had the opportunity to be fully vaccinated, if their parents choose, let's compromise. If students are outside for lunch, PE, recess, or after-school sports, let them choose to take them off. However, if they are in the building, please continue to require masks. You have brought in local medical experts throughout the year for their advice and disregarded what they have said. Because of this, you have lost the respect of this community. I know this is a difficult decision to make, and one where no answer is going to be easy or please everyone. Thank you for your time tonight. Good luck.
Thank you. I'm going to go a little off script here because I can't tell by the names if we have any students who signed up to testify. Okay, so, and then I'm going to ask you, how many of the students are on a mask optional side? And how many are on, okay, so I'm going to ask a student on a mask optional side to come up and testify next. And you'll just have to let me know your name so I can cross you off the list.
My name is Paige Tibbetts, and I'm a sophomore at Mountain View High School. During this time of COVID-19, the masks and 6 feet distance has made a significant impact on my life. Though I'm a pretty outgoing person in general, I've always struggled to make friends. And though I do enjoy time alone to relax, read, or do other activities, the feeling of complete isolation is too much. Having to wear masks in classes, such as choir, is extremely difficult, especially when singing. Big breaths and projection are imperative. I don't know about you, but I struggle to make a good sound when all I can get is a big breath of hot and sweaty fabric. Some teachers have even taken time to tell me to wear my mask outside, which is unacceptable. If I say no, they remind me that I am on school grounds, so masks are still required. Because naturally, it's very logical that the air within the school boundaries is more prone to give others COVID than other air. Air is air. Those who feel that wearing a mask is going to keep them safe are welcome to wear them. I'm tired of the isolation and seclusion from my friends and other classmates, and I'm ready to see others' beautiful faces and smiles. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask the students again to raise their hands, and I'm actually going to hit all the students. So, but I'm just going to have to rotate you guys. So, can I start right here with the gentleman in the front row first? If you'll come up first, because you're on the mask, maintain mask requirement side, I believe. And you just let us know your name. Or sorry. I'll be honest, with a mask, I can't tell. So if I said the wrong, just tell me. It's okay.
It's all good. My name is Jasper Ryan, and I'm going to be speaking in favor of keeping the mask mandates.
Okay.
Plain and simple, what I want to talk to you guys about today is the statistics. And we've heard them all a million times, but I think that that is truly the most important thing that we have to be listening to today. Because when all of the board earlier was talking about the statistics, when you're talking about the CDC and the CDH, they have already given you their recommendations. They have told you about the numbers. And for anyone in this room who hasn't heard the numbers, I would like to let you know that Ada County is among the reddest of Idaho for the number of COVID cases and COVID deaths, sitting at 464 deaths. 464 individual lives have been lost due to COVID-19. At the start of the pandemic, I understood the anti-maskers' frustrations. I had several of my events canceled. I wanted to see my friends, and I thought that this was stupid, that a simple piece of cloth over my face could ever be meant to protect me. But now it has come to my attention that I need to be listening to the professionals. And yet, yes, this is just a silly little piece of cloth, but that is what makes this mandate so important. Because if a singular piece of cloth can prevent the deaths of family and friends or of strangers, if it can prevent the permanent lung impairment and brain damage that COVID-19 can cause in the long run, then I'm going to wear this silly little piece of cloth. I'm going to listen to the professionals. And I would like to ask everyone around me to listen to them as well, to keep their masks on with me, to keep this mandate in place, because this is herd immunity. We can't do this without all of us being in it together. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on the other side, Denise Gray. I think I'm saying that right. Okay.
Hello. First, I just want to say how much we appreciate even just the consideration to change the policy. My name is Denise Gray. I have been a teacher in the district for 19 years, and my 4 children have also either gone through the district or are currently in the district. And I was just wanted to kind of come up here and talk about what we've seen in the schools. I am at an elementary school, and so I do feel like we have had quite an impact. It's had quite an impact on them. Their social development, it's been extremely detrimental to them. It's hard for them to understand facial expressions and to be able to interact with others. We've seen that for all year, and I think we're ready to just want to give those that can't speak a voice and let them know how hard it is on them. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going back to the students because I want to make sure I catch everybody. So who's next on the student list? We're here. I just hope you'll go left to right, or for you, I guess it'd be maybe right to left, but thank you.
You need to cross my name off the list, right?
Yeah, so you have to say your name.
It's Allie Hampton. My pronouns are she, her if you need them, and I am a student at Rocky Mountain High School, and every single one of my family members are involved in schools every single day. They're teachers or they're students. And so I'd like to start off by pointing out that a month or so ago, I emailed Superintendent Mary Reynolds about the switch to full-time in-person learning. And in her response to me, she stated that when social distancing is not 100% possible, as it is in most schools now, that mask wearing combined with hand washing and staying home if you are sick is the most effective prevention measures. And I agree, because masks are the most effective measure when social distancing is not possible, which is what we're seeing in schools today. I am a student. This directly affects me. When we switched to hybrid, even when we were recommended not to, I was able to accommodate to keep my family safe. I ate lunch in my car and avoided people to the best extent. When we went to full in-person learning, even when recommended not to, I was able to accommodate. I double masked until I was fully vaccinated. But this, I cannot accommodate. I can't keep myself safe. I can't keep my mom safe. And teachers can no longer keep themselves safe when masks are not required in schools. It is not difficult to wear a mask, but it is difficult to do school from home outside of hybrid because some kid across the classroom tested positive and didn't wear their mask. And this quarantine release program will be greatly affected by removing this mask mandate. The school board has an absolute obligation to keep students safe and an absolute obligation to listen to students. Masks will keep us safe, and the choice to wear one will not. I do not wear a mask to protect myself. I wear them to protect all of you, and that is why it is essential to keep the mandate, because masks only work when everyone wears them. They protect others, and they're not made to protect ourselves. It's made to protect others, and that is why it cannot be a matter of choice. Before I end, I would like to note that several of the people here speaking are not students. Students are the main people affected by this, and our voices deserve to be listened to. People will be angry no matter what, so please listen to us, and please do everything in your power to keep us safe. Thank you for listening to me today.
Thank you. All right. Travis Nielsen, I believe. Okay. There was another word next to it, so I want to make sure I got the last name right. By the way, I appreciate everybody being respectful. It's been really, really kind and great, and thank you.
Yes. Hello, Travis. Excuse me. Travis Nielsen. I have 2 daughters at Rocky Mountain High School and a son at Heritage Middle School. Just glad to be with you here today. I'm with the Smile West Ada group. For just the past 1 week, we've been collecting members, and we are already at over 1,700 people. On our site, we have chosen to make our names public. We have indicated our zone. We have indicated whether or not we are a parent, teacher, or student. And we have made comments that all can read. 80% of us are registered voters, verified with Ada County elections. We are real people with real concerns, and we are your constituents. Contrast that with the other petition, anonymous, collected with just the click of a button. There is a difference between clicking a button on a website and having a real person in the real world signing up on the website. The other petition has roughly 1,400 signatures. While the numbers of the petitions may be similar, they are not equivalent. They are using a professional tool for activist causes that is specifically designed to get clicks. Our members with Smile West Ada are reasonable, authentic people, sharing our thoughts as parents, teachers, and students. We run across the entire district from Zone 1 to Zone 5. We represent an organic, grassroots group that simply wants the choice to make masks optional. All of our efforts are through volunteers with not a dime to pay for it and no professional organization. You need to take us seriously. We are a group that supports the board. We are being genuine. We need this dealt with this year. Delaying it only causes consternation for next year. We implore you to make the decision now that masks may be optional for the last 2 weeks of school. Finally, I have to say that as I stood on school grounds petitioning to get people to join the group, that the positive response was overwhelming. Parents and students cheering when they'd see the sign. Yes, we can do this. And thank you for helping us. Now we ask you to make a change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please respect, please. Please, thank you.
I think we got this. I'm just going across the student. I really feel, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I really feel it's important when we hear from the students when they're here. So we're making sure that they get priority. Thank you.
Yes. Hello, for the board, my name is Jackson Holmes, and I'm a sophomore at Rocky Mountain High School. Every day I'm required to be within 6 feet of at least one fellow student who refuses to wear a mask. Our current policy requires masks, but it is not enforced with any consistency. As a result, in the last 14 days, 994 students in the West Ada district had to be isolated because they either developed COVID-19 symptoms, tested positive for COVID-19, or were exposed to someone who tested positive. These cases happened even without the current mask requirements for our schools. Schools should be safe in every way. We need to be within 6 feet of each other for effective collaboration and learning. The CDC says we cannot yet do that safely unmasked. I believe our safety and health is far more important than your comfort. I wear 2 masks to protect myself and those around me, both in school and out. My family, my friends, coworkers, parents, and siblings. As members of the board elected to make wise decisions on behalf of all students, you are asked to do the right thing for the right reason. Vaccinations for people ages 12 to 15 were just approved yesterday. Nobody, though, in that age group has had the opportunity to get the vaccine yet. Health experts say vaccination is our best option for controlling COVID-19, but we don't have that opportunity yet. So we have to do the next best thing, which is wear your mask. I'll smile when I'm safe. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next on the list, we have, Paula Beardsley. Did I say that right?
Hi. I'm a parent in the district, a middle schooler and a high schooler. I'm so happy to be in Idaho. We just moved here. Okay. I'm going to read a bunch from students that couldn't be here tonight but wanted to speak. Oh, so I can't say their names? Or you can't hear them without their names?
We prefer to hear, we don't want you to testify on somebody else. That's part of the rules. So just testify on your behalf. And you can testify on behalf of your own kids. So
I'll just read the other. I have a minute. Totally prepared. Okay. It's okay. Okay, so the CDH released guidelines on masks, not an order, also not a mandate. They didn't feel strongly enough to make wearing masks an order. They chose to allow others like yourselves to make that decision. You were all in this very important leadership position to make that choice for our children. Now, we hope that our children and the parents of the children will now have a choice to wear a mask or not at school. So please give them that choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, students. And then we got one more in the back. Thank you. That's helpful. I'm going to have you, though, we're going to finish here, and then we'll go one more to the other side, and then we'll have you up next. So you'll be two. Okay, thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Hello, my name is Connor Allen, and I'm currently a junior at Rocky Mountain High School. Now, hearing all of these statistics reminded me of something. Oftentimes, when taking any sort of medication, people have a moment in which they wonder, I'm doing much better now, why am I still taking my medication? Right now, the school board is asking this same question. By dissolving the mask mandate a mere 1 month before the last day of the school year, we are essentially flushing our metaphorical medication down the drain. Maintaining social distancing within schools is nearly impossible as it is due to the sheer number of students and the lack of space we have in the building to accommodate them. By taking masks out of the occasion, the only thing we've managed to do is throw our students into an unvaccinated time bomb where we ignore vaccination guidelines and CDC guidelines. So for the freshmen who are only eligible to get the vaccine as of a few hours ago, to my younger brothers who are still ineligible to receive the vaccine, for the upperclassmen who've yet to receive this vaccine, for the adults who have never stepped foot into a high school in the midst of a global pandemic and therefore do not understand what it is like, I would just like to say a few things. Students' health is not a dry run. We are not statistics. We are human beings. We deserve to be kept safe. And wearing masks makes us smile. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Courtney Kelly. Go.
All right. Good evening, board members, Dr. Reynolds, my fellow teachers, and community members. My name is Courtney Kelly, and I am a teacher in West Ada. I would like to speak in regards to removing the mask mandate for the last few days of school. But first, I would like to take a moment to recognize those whom we have and will hear from tonight, whose intent is for the benefit of all students. That is our job, and we are passionate about it, clearly. So before I continue, thank you to those of you who are truly advocating for what you believe to be best for not only your student or students, but every student in our school district, and please do not lose sight of that purpose. I just finished teaching my opinion writing unit, so I'm going to follow my own guidelines that I give to my students. I urge you to keep the mask mandate in place through the end of the school year, and here's why. According to the City of Boise Mayor's Office, with whom I spoke with earlier this evening, and the Public Health Emergency Order number 20-16, it states that to the extent individuals are outside of their residence, individuals must comply with the Stay Healthy guidelines, in which it states that every person is required to wear a face covering that completely covers the person's nose and mouth when the person is in an indoor public place. If you continue reading, public space is defined as follows. It shall mean, among others, educational and public transportation, including taxicabs and rideshare vehicles. Now, I know that we're talking about removing them for outdoors, but I would also like to point out that we have not clarified about busing and those situations, in which is what I talked to Mayor McLean about earlier this evening. All right, so if you vote to take away the mask mandate, that will not be applied to our West Ada schools that are within Boise city limits, and that will only add to the confusion and chaos of this school year for our students, parents, and educational staff. So please do not make unnecessary changes that only complicate and further divide our students and school buildings. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And it looks like we maybe had some confusion on the list there. So I'm going to ask the last student to come up, and then I'm going to take a couple from the mask optional side just to balance it out. So that's okay. We have one more right behind you. Yeah. Frankly, with the masks on, I can't tell who's a student and who isn't. So yeah, you have to self-identify.
Hello.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, please state your name too for us.
Hi, my name's David Ballard. Am I good to go? You're good. My name's David Ballard. I'm a student here at Renaissance High School. I have come here tonight to offer a student's perspective. I asked that the current mask mandate policy be retained until the end of the year and that the policy for next year not be decided on until a more certain time. Every single teacher that I have spoken to is in support of the current mask policy. We shouldn't be considering premature changes to the masking policy until we know more about who is going to be vaccinated, who is and is going to be vaccinated. Most students are not yet vaccinated, and a substantial amount aren't even eligible to be vaccinated. Until then, the safety of thousands of people in our community depends on mask wearing. Being maskless outdoors has only been deemed safe for vaccinated individuals. I know students who still have family members back home who are of high-risk populations and have not been vaccinated yet. These people were given the expectation that should they choose to return to in-person learning, that the proper COVID-19 precautions would be taken. It's too late to betray those expectations. I think that we can all agree that for most students, remote learning is not optimal. There is no reason to force those families back into remote learning just so kids don't have to wear a piece of cloth on their face. This goes for both voluntary withdrawal and medically necessary quarantining. I don't presume to speak for everyone. I'm just one person, but I hope I speak for all students when I say that we don't want to cause harm. We don't want people to get sick. It's not too much to ask us to wear a mask. It is insulting that there are people who presume to speak for me as a student, and all they are doing is advocating that I don't have to take safety precautions. This is not about me. We only have a few weeks left, and senior graduation is just around the corner. We shouldn't take risks with mask policy at this time. We don't want to let our senior class down and force ourselves into a situation where we can't have an in-person graduation again.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to take three individuals, or call it three individuals from the mask optional side because we just had three from the mask mandate side. So I just want to, just because we had an imbalance, so I want to make sure folks understand why I changed it a little bit. First up is Elizabeth Lewis. Did I say it right? Because I feel like that's an easy name. I should have got that one right.
That is an easy name. You're absolutely right. I just wasn't aware that I had signed up to speak, but here goes nothing. I am a parent of two sixth graders at Star Middle School. We moved here a year and a half ago to the lovely state of Idaho. And I will say that this has affected my daughter because she was in drama class, and drama has been completely canceled because they're not allowed to have any kind of performances or rehearsals. So that's over. All sports were canceled, volleyball, track, all of these things that they're missing out on. I think that we need to be able to see the kids' expressions on their faces. My children come home and tell me they're unable to make friends because they can't really look anybody in the eye. They're sitting 6 feet apart on an X. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I should also note we've got about 25 minutes left of the 1 hour. I checked my watch, so I'm looking at Mr. Stevens to see that we're aligned. Are we pretty close? Okay, good. I might have given a little extra because I was a little late in checking my watch. And Ms. Lewis, thank you because you did sign up not to testify, and I just accidentally didn't see that. So appreciate you doing that for us. So hey, you know what? Even in this spot, well, I think I make a ton of mistakes, so we're good. Rebecca Ruzic, is that how I say it? Okay, Ruzic. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Reynolds and Board of Trustees. My name is Rebecca Ruzic, and I live in Zone 2. What's up, Amy? So last summer, our family escaped California to this beautiful county of West Ada. With promises of a new start in freedom, our kindergartner and 7th grade sons were so excited about meeting new friends and rooting down in their community. We watched each week as policies changed and the requirements began to look just the same as where we left. My 5-year-old has a speech impediment. Being able to see mouths and others, being able to watch him talk is crucial for him to be understood and heard. The idea of my sweet boy being masked up and surrounded by other masked children broke my heart. We made the difficult decision to pull him before school started. Our 7th grader begged us to let him stay at VMS. Begrudgingly, we allowed him to go, and for 9 weeks, he couldn't make any friends. He and his peers were treated like infectious prisoners, isolated, socializing was a joke. He quickly became withdrawn and depressed, and he couldn't keep up with remote learning. Our fresh start in our new life was bringing him to tears, and our new start to freedom in Idaho was far from liberated. As a family, we made the difficult decision to pull our eldest as well. And we were the lucky ones. We had the ability, the means, and the choice to do so. Not everyone has been able to, and my heart breaks for these families. I know now we should have stayed. We should have stayed and fought for our kids and for everyone's kids. And for all the cases of exposure, there has been 100% recovery. Yesterday, I completed registration for my youngest to attend Hillsdale Elementary with all his neighbors and friends. Our eldest will be returning to VMS. To see these beautiful young children the other day with their faces covered was shocking. I burst into tears in the parking lot. We can go to games, bars, supermarkets, restaurants, parks, playgrounds, and more without masks, and our kids must go to school with the option to be face-free. This state prides itself on freedom, and our children are learning that they are not. We need to teach our children that body autonomy is for all bodies and for all faces. It's time to remove fear from our schools, the grip the union and biased experts have on a policy on our children, and it's time to put stake on parents knowing best. It's time to bring love to our schools, not fear. It's time to fill the halls with the bright and hopeful smiles of our future. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Sarah Olson.
Hi, I'm a mother of 4 children in the West Ada District and a daughter that graduated last year in 2020. I'm not coming here to just because I just want to disagree, but because of concerns for my kids, and I'd kind of want to go through how each level has affected each kid. I have a 2nd grader, and every morning she goes to put a mask on, and she says each one of them stink. Even though I wash them, and I've probably spent over hundreds of dollars on masks, and there's the issue every morning where she's like, this one stinks, Mom, this one stinks. And so we have a hard time finding a mask for her to wear. I have a 5th grader. He's a very active boy. I'm a runner. I ran 10 miles this morning. I went to go to the school one day, forgot something. We live right by the school. I ran back, had my mask on. I could barely breathe. And he has to wear his mask at recess. And like I said, he's a very active boy. I have an 8th grader and a 10th grader. And my 2nd grader, she told me the other day that she wished she could just spend time with me. As my kids get older, they don't want to spend time with me. They want to spend time with friends. Social interaction is a huge part of their life. My 10th grader, I have had issues with her being irritated and angry, getting angry. My husband and I have made it a point very often to talk with her at night just to make sure we know what's going on in her head and making sure that she's doing okay. My daughter that went off to college, she was isolated, had to wear masks. Now those things are opening up, but still masks are there. She has gone through anxiety and depression, never had issues with that before, and now that is an issue for her, and it's been really hard, even with masks, for her to make friends. As a mom, I am trying to raise children to be active participants in a society. There's more to it than just education. It's being able to socialize and engage with other people in this world, and I feel like we're hindering them with that, so please make masks optional. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I gotta get to the other. All right, I have on the other side, Christian Sapness. Am I saying that right? Okay. I'm gonna just ask that after every question unless it's the last name of Lewis. So.
Okay, so hi, I'm Kristen Sapness, and I am a 7th grade science teacher. Just gonna brag, I have the best job, and I dance around all day like a fool in a mask with no problem. My greatest concern is for the safety and success of all of my kids. If you were to visit a classroom, walk our hallways, see students at lunch and outside, trust us, the masks don't prevent all of the wonderful madness of a middle school. Kids are smiling, and we can hear and see the laughter, not fear. If masks are optional, this will backfire on those proposing it, as Mr. Heller and you discussed. CDH recommendations for the district 0-day or quarantine release program actually does prohibit participation and in sports and extracurricular activities, and it applies to either an exposure or positive diagnosis. Keeping masks means our kids will get to participate in their 5th and 8th grade celebrations, finals, though they might want to skip those, fun end of year activities, senior graduation, yearbook signing, and on and on. Here is a normal year of what like a yearbook looks like. When we close, this is what we got last year. So like, let's not risk this for them. Sorry, I'm gonna get all sappy. Missing the end of the year will cause more emotional trauma than wearing a mask for just the last 7 live instructional days. Our students have been so resilient through the constant flux and changes. Let's give them some consistency with a calm closure, not a chaotic and divisive one. We can end this year building more memories. Please don't risk our kids missing any more of these milestones. Thank you all for your time this whole year. This has been impossible for everyone in this room, and I appreciate all your time. Your inboxes must be overwhelming. So thank you all.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to hope, because I think the discussion item here still is about mask optional, but is it Lauren Castillo? And I'm assuming you're on the mask optional side. Okay, it said special ed, so I just wanted to make sure. It is special ed. Okay, you're perfect for both. Come on up.
All right. Thank you, Lauren Castillo. I have an 11th grader at Rocky Mountain High School. I have a 7th grader and a 6th grader at Sawtooth. The mission of West Ada School District is to provide an appropriate educational experience in the least restrictive environment for every student. I have 4 children, 3 whom attend middle school and high school within the West Ada School District. One of my children is part of the special education department. You have children within this district that have been left behind. You have children within this district who have been ignored. You have children within this district who have unique needs, special needs. You have who is speaking for them? Who's advocating for them? You have hundreds of children within the special education department who cannot, or should I say, are not allowed to advocate for themselves. They have been demanded to follow protocols and procedures that they do not understand. Many of those children who face challenges within the educational environment are suffering from the demands placed on them. My child alone has been targeted by teachers and staff regarding mask violations, even though I have made every attempt to educate those staff members that my child's disabilities impact the wearing of the mask. My child's reaction or compliance of wearing the mask is impacted by the school environment. Over the past year, my child has expressed frustration that teachers and staff themselves are not complying with the mask requirement. Myself and my husband witnessed this firsthand 3 weeks ago when we entered the school and staff members were not wearing masks. You can double check with the administration of that school. That was verified. We were on campus regarding yet another referral our special education student has received regarding mask violations. How do we ask children who are fighting a battle every day in their classrooms to follow these rules that are clearly broken? The mental and emotional health of our special education population is suffering. It has suffered all year. Our Gen Ed students are suffering. We as parents should have the option whether or not to send our students in a mask. We are asking for the right to advocate for the kids that cannot advocate for themselves. These do not need medical exemptions. They need the right to choose. Please consider your special education population. They look to you to do what your mission says. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Felton.
We have a student that didn't sign up and he wants to speak. Do you want that to happen?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a 30-second delay out there. That's why. So you got applause when you came up to the mic.
Good evening. I'll do this. My name is Greg Felton. I'm a teacher here in West Ada School District. And I'm here to speak specifically, and thank you for the opportunity to speak, by the way. I'm here to speak not about the statistics and what I've seen in the classroom. I'm here to speak about my son. My son's a senior at Meridian High School, and I'll refrain from saying his name, but he has always been a very social child, and this year he's filled with anxiety. And he's filled with anxiety because when he attends class, if he moves away from somebody without a mask, he gets ridicule and comments. And there have been days where he doesn't want to go to school, even though he's trying everything he can to stay safe. And it breaks my heart. He has listened and read the science, and he's listened to what our CDH has said. He's listened to what the CDC has said. He reads the news, he stays informed, and it scares him to no end. And I hate to see that anxiety of my son. You talk about anxiety with kids who are being forced to wear the mask. I want you to look at the other side and the anxiety of those kids that are worried about getting sick. He stood over in May my mother's grave as we buried her. And I'm relatively sure that this disease has him spooked. And to take away the mask mandate and put him in a situation where he has to worry about getting sick is wrong. Now, I understand there's a lot of opinions in this room, and I certainly hope we can get past the divisiveness and talk rationally about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna. Okay. We're gonna pause for just a second. I think we have one more student that I missed earlier. So, Vienna, I don't know which side you're on, so I'm just going to ask you to come up. Vienna Westonhouse, if I say that right, or you can correct me if I'm wrong.
My name is Vienna Westhouse. I'm a 7th grader at Heritage Middle School, and I believe that masks should be optional for several different reasons. So first, when I'm done with school, I just shove my mask into my bag. And I bet a lot of other people do that, or stick it in your pocket, or when you're at home, just throw it on a bench. Now, how clean is that? And then you wear the next mask, and you wear that mask at school the next day, and it's not very clean as you want it to be. And the cleanliness factor is why we supposedly wear the masks. And if it's not in a clean environment, how much good can it really do? So I want to just highlight one thing about my perspective. If we make masks optional, they are optional. So the teachers and students that want to wear masks still can, and they have that choice to protect themselves. But those of us who don't want to wear masks should have that opportunity and should have that choice, because every day at school, the teachers tell us they teach us how to use our brains and to make up our own opinions. And so we should have a choice in the matter and be able to use our own beliefs. Different school districts, such as Middleton, have chosen to lift the requirement and offer the students and parents a chance to choose whether or not they should wear the masks. And I, at least, have not heard of any bigger problems than this school district. Also, I know for me personally, and for lots of other kids at the school, you have trouble focusing on online days, and it's very hard to concentrate on your work. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think we're going to have time for a couple more. So Jared Papa, did I say that right? Thank you. And Jared, I'm also assuming you're on the mask mandate side. It just says American Academy of Pediatrics here, so I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
My name is Jared Papa. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and and speak on behalf of wearing masks, Dr. Reynolds and council members and board members. I have 4 children, 4 boys who are in the school district, ranging from Mary McPherson Elementary School to Meridian High School. I'm also a physician assistant and I work in pediatrics. And I would like to speak on behalf of pediatricians and pediatrics and read you what the American Academy of Pediatrics says about mask wearing. I encourage you to follow the experts, as has been reported by many of the persons here today. As a provider, when I have a decision to make that is with healthcare, I don't turn to Facebook or popular vote. I turn to the experts, including the American Academy of Pediatrics. This is what they say. The American Academy of Pediatrics strongly endorses the use of safe and effective infection control procedures to protect children. During the COVID-19 pandemic, effective infection prevention and control requires the correct and consistent use of a well-fitting mask. Face masks can be safely worn by all children 2 years of age and older, including the vast majority of children with underlying health conditions. Children 2 years of age and older have demonstrated they can be taught basic infection control skills, including wearing a face mask. In addition to protecting the child, the use of face masks significantly reduces the spread of severe acute respiratory syndrome, COVID-19, and other respiratory infections within schools and other community settings, particularly when everyone wears them. During the COVID-19 pandemic, plans for the safe return to children to school, childcare, and other group settings must include the universal use of face masks. Consistent use of face masks is one part of a comprehensive strategy for protecting children and mitigating the risk of spread of COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Jennifer Imhoff.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Imhoff. I'm the parent of a 2nd grader and of a 16-year-old. I'm not worried about graduations or dances. I'm worried about teaching children discourse. Good ideas don't require force. And when you force something like masks, you're picking a winner or a loser. You are sending a clear message to children that someone important to them is a loser, that they chose the wrong side. That child sitting next to them is different, and they're different in a negative way. The board needs to focus on how they're going to mitigate an inclusive environment regardless of what personal decisions are made in a child's life that is out of their control. Thank you.
Thank you. Carmen Scheller? You guys are making me work for it tonight with these signatures.
Carmi.
Apologize.
No problem. Chairperson Johnson, Board of Trustees, Dr. Reynolds. My name's Carmi Scheller, and I'm a teacher and community member, and I'm speaking today for mask use for the rest of this school year. You're hearing a lot from both sides. Again, you're being put in a position to determine policy while inundated by personal opinions of representative groups. All of them. Mine, all of them. Your statements on hiring Dr. Bubb spoke directly to the short-term need to repair trust within our community. Rebuilding trust relies on being trustworthy. Trustworthy behavior and decisions can be relied upon. The whiplash and divisive nature of many of the decisions this year has staff holding on by a thread. They need to be able to trust this system. Please do not listen to our opinions to make your decision around school mask policies. Instead, follow the current guidelines for keeping all teachers, staff, students, and visitors safe when on our school grounds. Health guidelines are updated regularly and are not based on our opinions. Please use them to drive decision-making policy on issues of health and safety in a data-driven decision-making district. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Stephanie Nevins.
Hi. How's it going?
I'm Stephanie Nevins. I have 2 boys in 5th and 3rd grade in Zone 2. I guess my biggest thing that I would like to say is obviously we're all here for an option. We're in America. We need to make sure that we stay and keep our freedoms the way that they are. The fact that people have the choice on a medical decision over my children is kind of absurd. It's never been that way, so I don't know why we're starting now to have somebody else tell me what my child's supposed to do when it comes to their medical needs. Being somebody from, honestly, like another mom said, on a dyslexic side, I had to be in special ed classes all my years of schooling. I couldn't imagine being in school right now, looking at people with masks on, and not having that one-on-one, even closer attention, and being able to have them break down what I had to do when I was in 4th, 5th, 6th grade. So obviously I look at my kids, I see the hurt, I see the distance between all of their friends coming into play, and it's not fair for a school district to make that type of decision on my child and what's best for my child's health. If I had to dictate on everybody's health, then we can start a whole nother topic on what you guys need to do to take care of your own health. But as a parent, it comes down to a choice, and I think that has been clear that please don't keep taking our choice away. We need to have a choice for everybody. You have a choice to wear a mask. You have a choice to wear 2 or 3 masks. You also have a choice to stay at home at school and learn from at home at school. Why haven't you given the other parents a choice to optionally choose masks? Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to finish up with our last one, Sue Darden.
Chairman Johnson, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds, thank you for the opportunity to speak. When the board made the decision in February to bring 6-12 back full-time, the main reason stated was it was the mental health needs of the students. Parents and students made a decision then to stay in school or go virtual with the understanding that masks would be required the rest of the year. We have 12 to 15-year-old unvaccinated students in overcrowded classrooms across the district. I know a majority of students and parents want to have masks optional for the last 3 weeks, but I am concerned about those students who are becoming very anxious about being in school with unmasked students and teachers. These students may be in the minority, but their mental health needs to be considered. It is too late in the year for them to go virtual. These students should not have to end the year dealing with fear and anxiety. If students decide they want to go remote, this would be an added burden on teachers who would be teaching in person and remote at the same time. If wearing a mask does cause mental health issues for students, those have already been addressed and those students have received their mask exemptions. One possible compromise is to allow masks to be optional at recess, especially for elementary and when outside in PE. This has been a tough year for all of us. Please, just let us get through the next few weeks without a change in the policy. If the mental health of our students was a concern in February, it should still be a concern in May. Thank you.
Thank you. So that wraps us up on our hour. That was perfectly timed, Sue. It's 7:30 exactly. So I'm going to look down the board here just to see if anybody needs a break before we keep going. You guys good? Everybody's good? Okay. So we're going to move now into the action portion. And, oh wait, sorry, we're going to finish up some discussion. So I want to make sure there isn't any other questions or comments or things the board wanted to ask before we go into the action portion. Everybody good? Trustee Kofelt.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I received a lot of emails, and then there's been comments about it here this evening. I am the newest trustee on the board, and I believe it was my second meeting in February when we made the decision to go back in person in March. But I'm also hearing that this promise was made that there would be no changes, additional changes to the mask mandate. And I don't recall that at my meeting. So I'm asking, was that something that was made previously by the board when the plan was being developed?
Do you want to take that one or do you want me to? Okay. Trustee Kofelt, we never had any intention or never discussed it as a board to remove the mask mandate in the current school year. And I think the administration sent out, when we went to full-time in person, letting folks know that that would be part of it was part of the plan when we accepted the full-time in person. It was part of the proposal, and we would keep that going. So I think we then had this question come up about outside, which caused the discussion to come back up. Wasn't a bad thing, but just circumstances changed. So you're right, we did, the board adopted the language in the proposal with a date change, but, and that included a mask mandate at the time that we adopted it.
No, and I appreciate that. The part I'm trying to get is, was there ever a promise made that it would not be revisited? And the reason I ask is I know there's been changes to that pandemic policy, like the addition of the zero quarantine or whatever it's called now and things. So was there a promise made that nothing was going to change in that? Because to me, that's an important element. If there was guarantees made, people made decisions based on that, and so that is an important factor.
There was a communication that went out to parents when they made the decision whether or not to move in that fourth quarter to virtual schoolhouse, or to stay in virtual schoolhouse or move back into in-person learning.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions, comments? Ed, you're staring me down. Well, for the action, I like to, hope the board will go with me here, but I'd like to take the different topics, the different recommendations that Dr. Randall's brought up one at a time. So so that we don't have a massive motion with 3 different things in it, we make it really simple. So from our action items from a potential mass revision, the first one that Dr. Randall's recommended, and I think if you'll repeat it for us, it's the outside one, if you'll just repeat what the recommendation was so folks know.
Madam Chair, trustees, for the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year, students will be required while indoors to wear a cloth face covering. Face coverings or masks will be considered optional for outdoor activities before school, after school, recess, lunch, physical education, outdoor classroom activities, etc.
Thank you. So that's recommendation number 1. So it open up to the board to entertain a motion to accept that recommendation, modify it, or reject it is our action, the way our actions work, or postpone it. So we just open the floor up that way for this first one. Trustee Ozuna.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion that we accept recommendation number 1.
Is there a second?
I would second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt recommendation number 1, and I think you can use the language from that. Okay. So is there any discussion? Oh, come on, you got to discuss.
I just didn't know if Sheena was
Okay, Trustee Kofelt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, probably like all of us and everyone in this room tonight, spent a lot of time reviewing documentation, reading emails, listening to folks that we encounter on the street, our teachers, our friends, our students, and as I've been kind of marinating how I wanted to approach this issue, and kind of the question I just asked you as we led into this motion really resonated with me is, I think we need to move in a positive direction, but if a promise was made for us to go, that we would continue with the mask portion of the plan. And that was an element that was communicated to family and staff as we move to in-person full-time learning. Families made decisions based on that. As some folks here tonight have mentioned, they had the opportunity to go to virtual schoolhouse, and that's correct. And they, whether someone did or didn't, may have been based on that guarantee or that promise. That coupled with this quarantine, and I may be saying it wrong, this quarantine release program, that is a big one to me also. I would hate for a child to miss out on a milestone like graduation or other significant milestones based on the fact that they were exposed to someone, and because of that, they were going to have to miss that. So because of that, I just wanted to give my background on why I will be supporting the motion tonight.
Thank you. I'm going to make Trustee Buffy talk here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share the comments of Trustee Colfeld. I'm also really uncomfortable with forfeiting the 0-day quarantine at this far into the school year, the end of the year events. I just, there's prevailing arguments on both sides, and I just am reminded by our code of ethics that our first and greatest concern is the educational welfare of all students, and for this decision, I feel like that is to keep that 0-day quarantine option, and so I will be supporting the motion as well.
Thank you. Trustee Kloppenstein.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, I just want to say thank you very much, Mr. Benetti. I mean, your group is so kind to come in, and I truly appreciate how respectful you've been and how kind you've been to be able to communicate. And I also want to say thank you very much, Ms. Sabori, and all the other parents who provided their time this year to be substitute teachers. You're very valuable service to us and to the kids. I wanted to address one thing, though. One thing that was said during the discussion about the 2-week dry run. One thing that does concern me with something like that, if we removed masks, besides the fact that parents who would in essence be involuntarily participating if they didn't want to participate in that sort of environment. In the summer, as Dr. Reynolds had said, that they could actually participate if they want to. That would be total choice. But during these next 2 weeks, if we did have people participate, we really wouldn't be able to get data on them after they participate. We wouldn't know if they were sick or what would happen to them through the summer. So we kind of lose contact during that period. So that would be a concern. Also, I do want to say that, virtual schoolhouse, we've spent literally millions of dollars in computer equipment and teachers and a system to be able to support so that there is a choice. And that, unfortunately, we have to have windows in which parents and students can come into that. And I just want to say that I think that, it's something that we have to be mindful when we're making quick changes, that virtual schoolhouse isn't something they can make a very quick change. So I would be supportive of the motion as well, and I just think that it's been a very good discussion, a very thoughtful discussion. I appreciate this so much, and I do hope we can continue this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Ozuna, you want to say anything? You want me to go before you?
No, I'll say something real quick. Most of my thoughts were shared by other trustees, but I guess the one extra thing that I'll add, the decision that we make here doesn't mean that's the decision that we're going to make in the fall. And I appreciate that you're breaking this out for us to have those conversations and that we can look at pieces differently, because we all want to see the smiles on our kids' faces, and we want teachers to be able to have those interactions with the kids that we're all used to. And I mean, we all are looking to get things back to what we would have called normal.
Thank you. So there's a quote, and I've loved it for a lot of years, and it says, "The world's changed by example, not by your opinion." And tonight we saw a lot of great examples of good public discourse. And so I appreciate and thank you all for that, because this is how public testimony is supposed to work. So thank you all. I actually would like to applaud you guys for doing that. So thank you. I don't love sitting up here with this mask on. It's not my favorite thing to do, and we've been doing it for I don't know how many months. And so but it does give us some insight into what the kids go through. I think I agree. I mean, I'm with Trustee Rusty. We did make some promises, and we also are really close to the end of the school year. That being said, I think we learned, a number of us learned this year, that we don't make a decision today that is going to impact us in 4 months. And everybody learned from our mistakes in that when we made some decisions too early in the process and then had to pivot back and forth. So what I just kind of personally see this as is we keep the promise for this year, but that doesn't mean we didn't hear what you said. What I heard was we really want our kids to be back in school in a normal way as soon as possible, and I can 100% get behind that. So I guess that's the promise that I would make as we work through this is that we're going to look at that data and we're going to get there as fast as we possibly can. But the one thing that this board is statutorily required to do is we are statutorily required to keep all students safe, and we have to look at it from that perspective. Even though, you know, I heard some things about you're making a decision for the health and safety of my child. We're legally required to do that when they're in the school building. So we have to keep that safety recommendation in front of us and that medical professional safety recommendation for this year. My hope is that we see the case count keep going down and we don't have to start this way in the fall. But we're going to make that decision at some point. And when we do, I hope that we're back in as normal as possible, as safe as possible right away. So I will also support the motion. Oh, I guess I have to do something, right? Like call for a vote. All right. It's a little bit of an emotional time. So you don't like it when you can't make everybody happy, right? So is there any other discussion? Trustee Kloppenstein.
Just one final thing to close. I just want to say that I think one thing that we all realize is that schools are not magic. The bricks and mortar that we have that make up a school building, they don't repel the virus. Masks do. And mandating masks doesn't mean we're being fearful. Well, it doesn't mean we're being fearful. It means that we're following facts. So I just want to say that they have been effective this year, and it shows within our numbers that we were able to open hybrid from remote. We were able to open up 4 days, and I think it's been literally our protection. And so I just want to say that I truly appreciate the medical experts who have come and supported us this year, and everybody and all their opinions to be able to have this discussion. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll just remind the board that the motion on the floor is that masks be optional outside, and that they still be mandated inside the school building. So that's the motion on the floor. So there's definitely not a one-size-fits-all motion. So is there any other discussion? All right. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. All right. The next item up is the recommendation number 2.
There's a second recommendation. Important.
Madam Chair, trustees, I want to just preface the second recommendation that we always are looking at our data, and I have learned that things can change with this virus, and while we're really hopeful, I just think it's always important to monitor what's happening and what category we might be in. So the second recommendation is during the summer months, masks will be optional for all school district activities, including summer school, summer intervention programs, and extracurricular activities.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. Is there a motion for option number 2? Trustee Kofelt.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion that we approve recommendation number 2 as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second? Trustee Ozuna.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we accept recommendation number 2 to make masks optional for summer school. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair, I was just curious if I can ask Dr. Reynolds, will that include remote option for parents who would like to be able to partake but not participate in school? In other words, a hybrid option or some way they can participate from home.
let's ask the question a little different. Is summer school required, or is all summer school optional?
It's optional.
All summer school is optional. So in that case, if the masks are optional and the student and parent are not comfortable with that, then they would not have another option. They would have to not be in person.
So they would not have the option of going to summer school if they chose that they did not want to, if they did not want to be in that environment?
Is that correct? They don't have virtual option in the summer.
Mr. Heller, our summer school programs are elective. Many of our students are actually participating remotely in many of the secondary programs. At the elementary level, it's more of a intervention program that we set up to help close the gap if students were missing any skills at the end of the year, for example, in reading. If we identified certain skills that the students were missing or weren't quite where they needed to be, then we offered this summer school program to help close that gap before they go on. So at the elementary level, there's no remote option for the children, but at the secondary level, for middle school and high school, the program for the most part is remote. Mr. Heller.
It is my understanding that the high school component, for example, is primarily a remote option. Middle school will have more in-person opportunities than the high school will for summer school this summer. And then Dr. Reynolds is correct. Our elementary options are primarily going to be in-person. So there isn't a plan for a hybrid version of those in-person activities. So it is a choice that they're going to have to make. And same with different activities that are going to happen, whether it be athletics, whether it be clubs, whether it be any of the different things that go on in our schools. Those are year-round anymore. So those things are all optional, and there is not going to be a hybrid option for those either.
So thank you.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Trustee Kofelt.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd just like to follow up a little bit on that and piggyback a little bit on what Mr. Benetti said in his comments when he spoke of the dry run, and I know he was speaking of it more towards the 2 weeks of this school year, but the reason I made this motion is I believe we are accomplishing exactly that. We took a measured step with the first motion. We're now going to go to a full mask voluntary option for the summer, coupled with the fact that our 12 to 15-year-olds will be able to begin having their vaccinations. And so we will truly have a good perspective of what the impacts will be for our subsequent decisions in the next school year. So that's why I made the motion, is I felt like it was an appropriately phased approach that will allow us to have data that can help us make prudent decisions.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Trustee Buffy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Initially, I was very supportive of the optional mask for summer school. I really like the idea of being able to collect that data and essentially have that dry run period, but a student comment tonight just really made that difficult for me when she said that, student health is not a dry run. And so I'm just really struggling with that piece. I'm really struggling with it because we don't know what the CDC and CDH guidance will be at that point when we get there. So I just wanted to share that I'm struggling with that in this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Ozuna?
I will add on, and Dr. Reynolds can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that with the summer school and the intervention programs, there are smaller class sizes as well. So there will be a more physical distancing. I don't want to take that away from the data that we're hoping to, that we want to collect, but there is more opportunity for distancing in the summer school.
Madam Chair, Trustee Ozuna, that is correct.
Trustee Kloppenstein.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just want to say that I don't think that, first of all, I agree with Trustee Buffy. I think, collecting information about, the student's health, I think that does present a moral issue. But I think also it doesn't quite present the data that we're looking for. If we're looking at infection data based on people not wearing masks, but they're having social distancing, I mean, does it really even provide that? So I think it's kind of it's a little bit of a false scenario to follow, to believe that this is going to give us an insight. I do think that our board's insight really should be on the health professional guidance that we're getting. They have sacrificed so much time to support us in these past few months. I do think that their guidance means something. And I just am concerned that we're looking at making future decisions based on whether a large group of kids over the summer gets sick. That's a concern for me. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Betty, we can't call on you. I'm gonna actually make a point. I'm gonna take one time now on student health, because we've fallen into this trap a number of times where we think student health is just about COVID, but it's not. So I don't want to challenge you that way, so I apologize for saying it that way, but I think that when we say student health, we got to think about the full picture of the student, and nothing's perfect in data or in student health. We're dealing in degrees here, and if it were perfect, this decision would be easy and we wouldn't even have people on different sides of this topic, right? But I think this is a measured step in the right direction, because we're going to try it. We're going to see we're going to learn some lessons. We're going to do it in a way that provides a level of safety for students and also a level of information for us to say how we start the next year. One of the things that has bothered me the most about us in August, and I still remember the date in my mind because it's August 24th, where we made the decision around how to start school. And we had such limited information. Nobody had done it yet. We didn't know how it was supposed to work. We really were flying blind. And I would love to avoid that when we get into the fall this next year. And this is really the only option we have in order to not fly blind at the beginning of the school year. So I think we have some different options for students. We're going to have some data. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to give us something. And we are keeping holistic student health in mind in this recommendation or this motion. So, Trustee Ozuna.
One of the other points that I just want to make is that the data for our youngest kids looks really good. That's why we got together and supported that K through 5 return to school earlier than the rest of it, because that data up to age 12 looks good. I think this week we expect for kids ages 12 and older to be eligible for vaccine, and we still have a few weeks before we're going to hit summer school, so that's going to change how this looks a little bit as well.
Trustee Kofelt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and I'm not implying that my fellow trustees up here had said this, but I just want, for clarification purposes, in my term of dry run, I was not implying that we wanted to use the kids as guinea pigs. What I was really speaking to, and I think you said it much more eloquently than I did, was just that with all the indicators moving in the direction, the state moving to a stage 4 today, if you look at the numbers on our school website about the cases per 100,000, all of these things are indicating, in my opinion, a direction of beginning to pivot and amend some of the guidance that we have in place now. And so that's what I meant by the dry run piece, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. It is hard not to say something wrong up here at times. And it's good to clarify intent, so appreciate it. Is there any other discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 The chair votes aye, motion carries 5-0. Thank you. So the last recommendation up on the docket here, I guess, for calling it something better. Dr. Reynolds, will you read it for us again? Thank you.
Madam Chair, trustees, I might need some help on this. I did not put a date certain in here. I didn't feel comfortable with that because, again, I think it will depend on gathering information and seeing what happens with recommendations But our third recommendation would be that the West Ada School District Administration and Board of Trustees will determine mask requirements for the 2021-2022 school year during a board meeting prior to the new school year.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very
Trustee
much,
Kloppenstein.
Madam Chair. I would move that we accept that recommendation from administration.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the recommendation from administration. Trustee Kofelt, go ahead.
This may be a procedural question. Are we at this discussion phase? There was a second? Okay.
We're at the discussion, yes.
I think from my perspective, I think the district needs to step out and take a more bold approach to this. I think the district needs to, in their motion this evening, needs to very clearly state to our families, our teachers, our staff, that it is our intent to be mask-free when we start the fall of 21-22. Now, we can always, much like we've done with other changes in data that have come up, if something occurs over the summer that we have to step back from that, then we can always do that if there's some unknown variant or something. But I think pushing this off to July puts a lot of folks in limbo. And I just think that we need to make a more bold approach. And so my procedural question to you would be, does this motion and second need to be voted on before a backup motion can be presented?
So Trustee Kofelt, you can amend the motion, and then the amendment would be voted on first, and if the amendment passes, then it amends the original motion. That's the procedural option for you available. Before you can do it at any time, but before you do that, can we, so I'd personally like to hear from our new superintendent, Dr. Bubb, he's in the back, around some recommendations, because I think there's some procedural thoughts here around parents who want to make a choice around virtual school in the fall, and parents who want to remain in person, and kind of what the timing are of some of those decisions, so that we know timing as well as intent, I think are the two questions that I have. So if you would help us with that.
Sure. Madam Chair, trustees, it's my understanding, and Mr. Myers was here earlier, my understanding is 5 days into the school year is when that deadline. My goal would be, obviously, that we give parents plenty of opportunity to make a decision between virtual schoolhouse or a regular building prior to, so we do it in the right order. So we say, this is what the mask mandate is going to look like, or we're going to remove the mask mandate. Please select the school that you want to go to. That option will be available 5 days into when school opens. So they'll have that option going into school. I would like to have that, I would like to make a decision obviously much before that. So that's not at all encouraging to say, let's move this into late August. I would agree that making a decision earlier rather than later is really important for us. I think we need to give our families some direction so they know where they're going.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So again, procedurally, you just call for an amendment, and I call on you, and you make one if you want to. So now your light goes on. Trustee Kofelt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd like to make an amended motion, and my motion would be that the school district moves to a mask optional policy at the beginning of the 21-22 school year.
Is there a second? The motion dies for lack of a second. Maybe I can help you. Maybe I can help you, Trustee Kofelt. If there were language that said that the school district has the intent to make masks optional and can keep students safe, that we put that as part of the amendment, that might get a second. Sorry, the difference is one is intent and one is requirement. And intent is different than requirement. So we said all along that intent, we always had the intent to get kids back in school, but we had to do it safely. In this case, we have the intent to try and have kids in school as normal as possible, but we also have to do it safely.
Madam Chair, I would accept any language that made it clear to our parents and our staff that we are approaching everything for the 21-22 school year with masks being an optional feature. The reason, my approach was I would be a bit more bold and say this is what we're going to do, and then if we have to back off of it because of changes, then we do. But I can appreciate my colleagues maybe feeling uncomfortable with that. So I would be happy to.
A motion is always in order.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember how you eloquently worded that. I'll offer an amended motion that would state it is the district's intent to be mask-free for the 21-22 school year. I'm trying to think if there's something I got to add to that. Barring or including that, we can do so with our children being safe.
Thank you. You've heard the motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that an amendment be made to the original motion that declares I'm not going to repeat it exactly, but it declares the intent that we move to a mask optional policy as long as students' safety can be maintained, and that be the intent of the district. So is there any discussion? Trustee Ozuna.
I'll just say that the one piece of data that I'm going to want to see to make this decision for fall is really what does the safety look like for our youngest kids? Because kids 12 and older are going to have the option to have the vaccine. So what do the numbers look like for those youngest kids? So some data that I would like to see when we have this conversation for our cases, for our in-school exposures that turn positive, can we see that information by grade? Can we just break out our own data as much as we can that gives us that number really around the early middle school and elementary school, and then we can be prepared to talk about that.
Thank you. I would concur with that request. And we should have it because all of the summer school for K through 5 is in person. So, Trustee Kloppenstein.
I would actually support this, except that I would ask that we also have the intent of having a workshop with our medical advisors, so that we're having more background than just in trying to make a decision like this. It's a big decision. I think we should have that medical decision background they've had all year.
Thank you. I think we can. I'm going to look at Dr. Bubb, and he and I, unless you guys decide you don't like me as chair anymore, but he and I are eye contacting here. I think we can do that without a motion. We can just say that'll be part of it. We'll make sure that's part of the discussion. Now, if you get rid of me, so you're going to have to find somebody else to do it. So, is there any other discussion? I'm sorry, we can't. Sorry. I wish we could, but some for formalities. All right, since there's no other discussion, the first thing we're going to vote on is the amendment to the motion. Is everybody clear on what we're voting on? I want to make sure of that first on the amendment. Thank you, Ed. That's so hard. I'm actually going to trade Sheena spots just so I can look down the line. All right, if everybody's clear and there's no more discussion, then I'm going to ask us, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The amendment passes 5-0, and now we'll vote on the full motion as amended. Is everybody clear on the full motion? We are using Dr. Randall's language, so I don't think we had any changes to that. Is there any discussion on the full, before we vote on the full motion? Trustee Ozuna.
Can I clarify then are we voting on the amended? motion, or are you voting on the original motion?
It's the original motion as amended. So the original motion has the language of Dr. Reynolds
With
plus
the-
the intent
thank
and
you.
the safety. Yep. Is there any other clarification, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. So I want to make it really clear what just happened. Masks are now optional outside. Masks will be optional for summer school, and we will make a decision on the masks in a time certain, and we'll have some discussion with medical professionals, but the intent is to try and make masks optional. We'll have to, we won't know. We don't know tonight. Yep. It's, well, time certain is in the motion, so it's just not a specific date. Sorry, I'm gonna.
I just want to understand, that's all. I'm not attacking, I just want to understand what time certain means.
Yeah.
Not a time certain.
Yeah, and you and I can talk offline on it, so, okay. All right, great. Thank you, guys. For that, if you guys don't mind, I'd like to take a quick recess, so we're gonna move to recess. Thank you.
Don't anybody overreact. Maintain your respectfulness and your
Okay, welcome back. We now are moving into the next portion of our agenda, which is the discussion, and first thing up is our bond presentation and adoption of a bond resolution. You guys didn't quite draw the crowd that we just had.
Awesome, perfect. Madam Chair, trustees, Dr. Reynolds. I'm going to quickly walk through some slides. We're going to talk about some scenarios, answer some of the questions you had from last presentation, and then I'm going to turn over the time to Nick Miller with Holly Troxel so he can walk through the legal documents that you've all received associated with the bond. So quickly, we're going to just revisit the structure of the bond refunding we're looking at. Again, talk about the why, visit a little bit about scenarios, and then we'll do some legal document discussion. Structure of the bond sale, we're looking to do an advance refunding, pull forward maturities from 26 to 34. District will contribute approximately $4.25 million. We're looking at around just under $60 million associated with the bond sale. And again, it'll be taxable due to the tax law restrictions. So the why, if you remember from the last conversation we had, we're looking to save taxpayers some dollars. So roughly $11.4 million. It'll also allow us to utilize the market values that we have and take advantage of reduced interest rates. And it will also allow us, as we walk into the next scenarios that I'm going to talk about, allow us to be able to issue new bonds and still look at how we structure that levy rate going forward. So during the last board meeting, we talked a little bit about scenarios, and we asked, you guys asked for some information about how would it look, especially if we did a larger bond. So this, the picture you're going to see here is a hypothetical large bond. So we picked a number around $350 million. There's no growth in the market rate associated with this. So again, if you have growth in market rate, that'll obviously impact the levy rate, and we'll be able to reduce it further. What you see from this scenario, you can see right here on the left, we have the dollar amount we're currently levying. We're looking at about $40 million for this year that we've already levied. That number will drop even should we look at the opportunity of doing a larger bond. So again, if we chose to do this hypothetical, larger $350 million bond, I guess to talk through that process a little bit, the way it would work is look a lot like a bond sale you're used to seeing. So if voters were to approve that, it doesn't mean a $350 million sale happens immediately. What you're actually going to do is structure that sale over the life of the bond as you also look at the construction needs. So it's going to look like, as you see from the scenario here, we kind of just split it up equally, but for individual bond sales. And so what we're able to do with that is we're able to leverage the authorization we have, be able to finance and structure the debt as we go through, while also being able to, in this situation, be able to manage our levy rate, and as you'll see, a gradual reduction. Again, also, because of the refunding, able to save taxpayers that interest dollars as well. So in the event we didn't do the refunding, so that's our other option based on the decisions you have tonight. What you will see is a pretty big reduction. You'll see in the levy the dollars that we need to levy associated with our outstanding debt. And so you would see a short-term, at least very quick reduction in the levy rate, and potentially a larger reduction in taxes that we would levy. But as we then turn around and look at how we're going to have to structure our capital plan moving forward, we have the same scenario you saw here, with the $350 million spread it across. And now you can see that temporary reduction again comes back up. And so now we have this situation where we could be put in a position where we have a levy rate increase. Again, with this scenario, we've lost that opportunity to save that $11 million. So basically, by not doing the refunding, we're not able to generate that savings. There is the potential, as you can see from the picture here, that should the capital needs come, there's also a tax increase that could happen as well. And then there is also some increased costs associated as you structure later on down through the debt associated with interest costs that could also be an issue going forward. So what I thought I would do is take a moment. We're going to have Nick kind of walk through legal documents. Give yourself a little bit of a break maybe from talking about financials, and then we can come back and answer questions as a whole.
Jonathan, do you want us to save all financial questions until the very end, or do you want to take it before this? Okay.
If that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, members of the Madam Chair, members of the trustees.
Chelsea Porter from our firm was here last month to kind of give you a preview. I'm going to give you a little bit of a review now, what we talked about a month ago. And then we'll move to the description of the legal documents that you would adopt that would effectuate the bond issue. We don't need to come back another time. Once you've approved the resolution, we just go forward. So let's see, I'm not sure who's running the slides here. Do I do that?
I can if you want to.
Okay.
You can yourself as well.
I just click.
If you use the.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, so as I said, we'll take a look at what we did last month, review the timeline. I'll present the resolution, which is the single action item. It contains the approval of all the other documents in it. Obviously, you met this long-serving finance team that served the district well for quite a long time. And Christian from Zions is here, Michael and Eric from Piper Sandler, and then, as I said, Chelsea was here last month from the bond counsel role. As you saw from Jonathan's presentation last month, this month, we're refinancing 25th bonds for a savings. We're moving up the final maturity, so we pay bonds off sooner. One thing I wanted to point out there, if you look at the last bullet point, all the infrastructure and tax legislation pending might restore tax exemption for refunding bonds. But our recommendation is that it's not a sure thing and we shouldn't wait for it. Eric and Michael and Christian can comment on the rate differential, but if the law was the way it was before 2017, we could be doing this tax exempt. The markets reacted really well to provide an opening or a market capacity to issue taxable bonds, but it will take congressional action to go back. All the industry advocates are advocating for restoring tax exempt refundings, but it's 3 or 4 months ago we got a little excited and thought maybe it would come quickly. I think we're pessimistic now that it's going to come in time, but I just wanted to point that out.
Can I ask you a question on that?
You bet.
What's just from the tax exempt versus taxable bonds? What does that mean for us from a policy standpoint?
Nothing really from a policy standpoint. The state of Idaho still views you as having the authority to issue bonds under state law. We're really just talking about what the federal tax overlay is. And until 2017, the tax code said if you can refinance your bonds one time and the interest rates will be exempt from tax, or the interest is exempt from tax. So generally speaking, I mean, I think you've probably heard this before, but if I have to pay tax on interest to get to the same net, I need a higher rate. I mean, as I get the interest, I pay tax, my net is some smaller number. If I have a tax exempt bond, that means that the interest rate is lower because I don't have to pay tax first. So generally speaking, taxable rates will be higher. As a policy, I would say the district should take advantage of what the market gives you. We can have Eric and Michael and Christian come up and review what they've said to you before about the trend lines, and also the fact that because we're moving this debt forward, again, you guys have to help me out if I do say the wrong thing, but because we're moving this debt forward, we're going to be issuing bonds that are only going to be outstanding for 2, 3, 4 years. So just like your house mortgage, where the 30-year rate is higher than the 10-year rate, we're going to have probably a lower. The reason we're saving so much is that the bonds we're refunding go out to 2034. So we're replacing 15-year debt with 3-year debt. So even though we're switching to taxable rates, we're able to save a lot of money because we're just so much farther back on the yield curve. Am I answering your question?
Yeah,
Madam Chair?
I think what I heard was if we're going to reissue, we're going to have taxable bonds, which is a higher interest rate. But what we're saying is over time, the total interest paid will be less because we're not paying the taxable bonds for as long as we were paying the tax exempt bonds.
Correct. You're taking advantage of the fact that you've got the ability to layer in a lot of debt in the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. So you could move that debt forward. I mean, in a perfect world, we would be issuing it at tax exempt rate. Mm-hmm. But the difference for 3 years between taxable and tax exempt is not very much. So you're not giving up much on savings, and if you didn't do it, you don't get the savings.
What's the rate today and what's the rate we think it'll be?
I'll defer to the finance folks on that. I didn't.
Okay, it'd be helpful to
check
know
on it.
just
Sure.
the difference in rates.
Sure, you bet. Happy to do that. So here's the timeline we're on. Obviously, we did a presentation last month. We're here tonight to approve the documents. Our timeline is by the end of this month, we will actually go out to the marketplace. This preliminary official statement, you spend a little time looking at in the document presentation. That gives the market about 2 weeks to react to the fact that, hey, the West Ada School District would like to sell $50 million of bonds. It gives Piper Sandler a chance to call potential customers and say, we now have an official document that you can review to decide if you want to invest. So we have a little time to complete that. We have a draft that you saw. We're hoping that we can revise that draft to reflect what the legislature actually did. Right now, we just say legislature is still in session, because that's all we could say last week. But I think we'll have it fixed. I like the timeline because we have time to improve and insert what the legislature did with respect to your upcoming budget, appropriation for fiscal 22. So then there's that, like I said, there's about that 2-week period between May 24th and June 3rd. And then on June 7th, so we'll sell the bonds, and that's when the interest rates are locked in. So when Eric, Michael, Christian talked to you about rates, remember, we can't lock in rates tonight. We're going to lock in rates on June 3rd. So it could change slightly. But they can comment on their, again, crystal ball about where rates might be. Generally speaking, rates have been pretty stable. They're actually slightly better than they were a month ago. So, we're in a favorable environment, the short answer. And then we'll be all done by June 17th, so it'll be reflected in this fiscal year. Jonathan will have it out of the way when the budget's done. It's just good timing overall. Okay, so now here's the legal documents themselves. As I said, it's a single action item to approve a bond resolution because within it, I don't know if you checked my memo and so on, it approves every other document that we need to have for the bond offering. I tried to do this in your board packet, and I'm not expecting you to read this, but remember this was in your board packet, and I tried to give you a little bit of a roadmap. I said, well, if you just had 10 minutes to look at a big stack or a big PDF, here are the things to look for. So that I'm going to go over that with you, but that's where we are now. As we gave you this preview or cover memo that shows the documents that comprise the bond issue, and this is the resolution. I think I even included a suggestion that when you're ready for the motion, you move to adopt the resolution entitled so-and-so. So this is the title of the resolution. And that can be the form of your motion. So these are the main documents that the resolution adopts: the official statement, bond purchase agreement, and the escrow agreement. We actually can't pay off the 2015 bonds till 2026. That might be wrong. So there's an escrow agreement that sits there for several years till the old bonds are paid off. Those dates aren't exactly right. And then there's this thing called a reporting.
Can you go back to that? Sorry.
Yeah,
we're going to issue the bonds now, but we can't pay them off for
No, I'm sorry.
4 or 5 years?
We can't pay off the 2015 bonds till 2025 because they were issued. It's unlike your house mortgage where you can refinance and write a check and get a new mortgage. Bond investors say, I want to have 10 years locked in.
Okay.
So, but what we write into the contract in 2015, what we wrote into the bond contract for those bonds, said if we, the district, ever give you a fund of government securities, U.S. government securities, that a CPA firm can show will generate enough interest and principal to pay you off, well, we can refinance you. Right? We can essentially say you're now secured by the escrow, not by the levy. And the levy now secures the new bonds. That's what a so-called refunding or an advance refunding is. You're paying the bonds in advance of the time that you're refinancing it in advance of the time you can actually call the old bonds. So, and I'm sorry about that. I didn't check the dates, but that your date is 2026. And we're talking about the 2015 bonds, not 2012 bonds. So
Okay.
apologize for that mistake.
And that's okay. I can adjust to 2015 in my mind.
Right.
The question is, though, is that we issue these new bonds in August or June or whatever date it is, and then we're going to sit on a portion of that cash until we can pay them off on August 15th of 2026? Is that
Well,
what we're saying?
Right, yeah, we're not building any new buildings, right? This isn't a new money bond issue. This is a refinancing. But the only way we can do it under the contract with the 2015 bondholders is put this money aside. Now, you do have a discussion, putting aside the graphs that Jonathan showed you where you would have a big dip in certification if we don't pull this principle forward. You could wait till 2025 and then just issue refunding bonds at that time and pay them off right then. But you don't know what interest rates are going to be in 2025, and you have this, intervening period where you'll create a hole in your levy program. So this is we've done this innumerable times for West Ada and other districts, is take advantage of rates when they're good and set up this so-called escrow fund with the proceeds of the bonds. And also, as Jonathan mentioned, you're putting some of your district cash in there. So the bonds plus the cash will be deposited, and it'll earn interest, and it'll earn enough interest that by 2025, it will be sufficient to pay off the bonds. The market won't let us go to market unless we can show that we have sufficient funds to pay off the 2015 bonds through the escrow account. Is that helping answer your question? So again, I apologize for the mistakes on the dates. And I left off here, there's an agreement through which the district says we will provide information to the marketplace. It's already in place. We're just re-upping it for this bond issue. I've got 10 more slides on that I took out, so you can be happy I shortened my presentation a little bit. Okay, so here's what I was talking about, the official statement. I think when we did the preview, we stuck in the official statement from the last bond issue. If you can see, this is the one we're now working on, and as you can see, it's dated May 24th. That's the day it's going to go out to the marketplace. And under the IRS regulations, SEC regulations, Piper Jaffray can't go to the market unless the district says, we're giving you a certificate that says, hey, we've deemed this final. We've reviewed it, and it's got all the information in it that it needs. But we're not quite ready to do that tonight. So we're asking in the resolution, you're effectively delegating to Mary Ann and Jonathan the ability to say, well, between now and the 24th, we're going to get this in shape, and it'll be ready to go. So that's one of the things you're doing in the resolution. If you recall the cover memo, I said the two key sections of the resolution are 208 and 209. So as you can see, I'm ticking off the subsections of 208, and then we'll hit 209. Again, 208E, the bond purchase agreement. Eric and Michael can talk further about this, but this is what's known as a firm commitment. It's pretty much market standard. There was a time, 20, 30 years ago, underwriter would say, well, I will buy these bonds on best efforts. In other words, I will sell what I can sell. But firm commitment means that on that day of the pricing, June 3rd, Piper Sandler will sign a contract that says even if we haven't found a buyer for every last bond, we will buy all the bonds. So the district has essentially zero risk of unsold bonds. That's what you're compensating Piper Sandler to do, is take the risk that, because really this happens in like a 2-hour period. So you kind of have to imagine, how do you sell $50 million worth of bonds in 2 hours? Well, there are a lot of people who buy bonds, but we may not have all 50 million sold in that period of time. But on that day, if Piper has a good indication that the buyers are there, they'll sign the contract that says they have purchased all the bonds. So district has no risk for unsold bonds. Here's the escrow agreement, Madam Chair, that I referred to. It's a contract with U.S. Bank. provides for a deposit, and then it provides for them to disperse the money on the payment dates of the old bonds. It's, it's very carefully structured to coincide with the payments of the old bonds. Refer to the information reporting agreement, very similar to the agreements the district already has. And then I alluded to this, the delegated officers, that is Marianne and Jonathan, to complete the official statement. But then the main thing they're going to do here, and this is where we go to section 209 that I highlighted, you're delegating them to make the determinations on the date of the sale of the bonds. So on June 3rd, we're all going to get together, and here's the things that are provided for in section 209. We'll figure out what the interest rate is. We can talk a little bit about where we think rates are, but, and prior to 2014, when the legislature changed the law, we would have to have you have a special meeting on that day, because we didn't think the boards had the power to delegate till the legislature gave them that power, which they did in 2014. And in 2015, 2018, the other times the districts issued bonds, we've utilized this same format, which is to delegate, because you gain two things there. One is the inconvenience of a daytime meeting, and if for some reason June 3rd isn't really the date, the market's choppy, we have to wait a day or two, we can wait a day or two. And so you gain the flexibility of being able to hit the market correctly. There is a limit, so number two, the bond amount might change slightly depending on what the purchasers are willing to pay for the bonds, but it can't exceed the amount we're refunding. That's a state law requirement, so we have a ceiling on that. And also number three, bonds can't be sold with a discount in Idaho. The legislature is kind of enacting in loco parentis or supervision of us, because they don't want us to sell $1 million of bonds for $900,000. You have to sell at least at the par value. So that's a limitation on the delegation. And then we have in the resolution this delegation certificate. So Marianne and Jonathan will sign that, and they certify that basically we have followed. How do we go backwards? Let's see. Just one slide. That we have followed this prescription, right? We've done what we were delegated to do. It's just a little bit of an extra check. So that's really the key provisions, the legal documents. As I said, it's a single motion to adopt the resolution. It contains within it every other approval and document that comprise the bond issue. So maybe I'll just, why don't you ask questions and we'll bring the right person up to answer them.
Okay. Can we answer the rate question first?
Sure.
All right, Madam Chair, Trustees, Dr. Reynolds, just to give you kind of the quick version of this. The average coupon rate you're paying on the bonds, this $50 million that we're looking to refund, is 4.42%. In the refinancing, we expect the new rate to be roughly 0.6%, and that is the taxable rate. The differential between that and what we would expect to get if these were tax exempt is probably no more than 0.1%. And really, most of those savings are coming from the fact that we have pulled those bonds forward to fully be paid off before any of them were actually expected to be paid. Again, these are the 2026 through 2034 maturities, and by doing this, we have them all paid off by 2024. So that's really where most of the savings are coming from. I would not recommend, Nick mentioned that there's potentially going to be congressional action to bring that advanced tax exempt refunding back. I think again, with that small differential, I would say by the time that does happen, the odds that the tax exempt rates are higher than the current taxable rates is pretty high. But also there is, of course, some time sensitivity to the refinancing given the impact to your levy rate without it.
So I want to make sure we heard you right.
Yeah.
The current rate is an average of 4.42%.
Correct.
and the new rate will be 0.6%?
That's what we're estimating.
So it's going to be significantly less.
Very significantly,
Are
yes,
you,
yes.
it doesn't make any sense to me. The bond rate is going to be that much less?
Madam Chair, it comes from the difference in the term. So along with the fact that rates today are substantially lower than they were in 2015.
Is that the rate or the differential in the rate?
No, that's the rate. So again, the bonds you're paying on right now have are averaging that 4.42%. That's the average interest rate you're paying on that $50 million. We expect the new rate in the refinancing, which again is only a 3-year term, to be 0.6 roughly.
Sure,
I'm
following
it's a
it.
huge difference, yeah.
So is there a cash dollar? I mean, that's the difference in the cash dollar amount that Jonathan showed us in the savings?
So that interest rate differential plus the fact that these are being paid off so much faster and you've gotten rid of the remaining 10 years of interest payments, that adds up to that $11.4 million in savings. Madam Chair, were you asking about the $4 million cash contribution?
No, I think I'm just, what I'm struggling with was the slide that said the taxable bonds are more than the non-taxable bonds. And then we have non-taxable bonds that are at 4.42%, and now we're saying taxable bonds are going to be lower at 0.6%. So that's what I'm struggling with, is the two don't jive to me.
Madam Chair, trustees, so with taxable and tax exempt, the idea is that taxable bonds issued today would have higher rates than tax exempt bonds issued today, right? So if I was issuing bonds today, choosing between taxable and tax exempt, the tax exempt would have a lower rate. But again, that's just a point in time. So, tax exempt rates 2 years ago could be higher than taxable rates today because rates today are so much lower. So it's partly that rates today are substantially lower than in 2015, to the point that these taxable rates are lower than 2015's tax exempt rates. But also that, we're taking what goes out to 2034 and we're shortening it to 2024. And that's making up most of that differential. It's just that it's such a shorter term. 3-year bonds have a much shorter or lower interest rate than 15-year bonds, even when you consider that difference in taxable and tax exempt.
Thank you. Any other questions? Jonathan, do you have more slides after this?
Madam Chair and trustees, Dr. Reynolds. I don't, as of right now. We walked through this opportunity to ask questions, and then I can answer any questions you have associated with the refunding.
Okay. Is there any other questions? Fine, I'll do it. We asked for this last time, and I still really want to see it, and I don't know if we have it yet, which is kind of you gave us option A and option B, but what I was missing was the rate, the impact to the taxpayer and the impact to us. And so, because the decision point for us is, do we give the taxpayer a levy rate reduction today, right? Which means the rate they pay for us for taxes, the levy rate goes down, or I guess it'd be 2022, but, or do we pull some debt forward and keep the levy rate flat and pay off some debt, which means we'll actually potentially have some savings down the road for folks. We may bond again and we may not, but, and I was trying to see, what's that mean to the taxpayer in 2022, and what does that mean to us in both of those options? So, because I feel like that's the policy decision points for us.
Madam Chair, trustees, Christian's going to help me out a little bit because he helped with some of the scenarios. But essentially, I guess to walk back through these were that was part of the question we were hoping to answer with these scenarios, right? Is if we do the refunding, right, we're going to see the amount that we're going to levy to hover around 30 million. You're going to see that consistently, and then you're going to see a gradual reduction in our levy rate. Again, we're going to assume this is no growth in market value, so if any of you have read the articles, right, we'll just put that off to the side for now. And so that is what this picture is trying to convey to you, is that with this savings of $11 million, this is what the expectation would be for the district as far as what we would need to levy to be able to make our debt payment, and for the taxpayers, is you're going to start to see a gradual reduction throughout the life of the bonds. If you choose not to do the refunding, step one is that $11 million savings goes away, because that's the kicker associated with the refunding. And then you're going to see a much larger gap, right? So you're going to see that now our number we went from 31 million to roughly around 21 million. We're going to see a further reduction. And then as you start to look to say, now what our capital plan needs are going to go, you're going to see that little graph come, and then you're going to pop right back up to the green bar that you're going to see in 2024 as we look at what would, if we chose to build and as we chose to implement our capital plan, what could happen to taxpayers' rates. And so you'll see that increase specifically as that comes up based on their approval of a bond should it pass then.
So can you flip back to slide 1 for just a sec? So in this scenario, taxpayers save $10 million in levy essentially next year, and that is pretty standard for the next, 10 years, it looks like. In scenario 2, if you'll flip to that one, taxpayers receive a $20 million savings, and then it goes down to $30 million in savings because we get an extra 10 in the next year. And then depending on if we actually get another bond passed, we would potentially go back up to the 30.
Yeah.
That's what is that a fair understanding?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I've fallen down on the job. Trustee Kofelt.
Thank you. Jonathan, so in this scenario, the jump back up to 30 million, I think in the second scenario, like if we did nothing, that amount is what would be needed to continue with the identified capital improvement plan that is already kind of agreed to.
Madam Chair and trustees, what I'll say is that amount will work within the identified hypothetical large bond plan that we put on the presentation. So, kind of, yes.
And just for
Christian, do you want to add anything?
Okay.
Yeah, Christian.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, Trustee Kofelt, just to put a number to this, so this, let me just say, this is hard to do because we, of course, don't know what your market value is going to be next year. There is some flexibility in the amounts that you levy relative to your debt service, but just maybe to look at this jump back up, that jump from 2023 to 2024, assuming this were the actual scenario, a $350 million bond, and we issued this first piece in that size, that jump from that roughly 10 million to 30 million at today's dollars on a $400,000 home would be asking for a $270 increase to people's annual taxes. Now, of course, the taxes would have gone down by that beforehand, even lower, but you would then be asking in your election, we need you to raise your taxes by that substantial amount. So, sorry, $180. So $60, that difference there is about $60 per 100,000. So again, on a $400,000 home, would be asking for about a $180 increase at current market values.
What's the savings in option 1? Or in savings in the first year, the dollar amount that they save?
Yeah, so so that every 10 million at current market value works out to about $30 per 100,000. So we're talking about, going down about 60 and then another 30 and then asking to come up 60. So going down 90 over 2 years and then asking voters to come back up by 60. And that, again, per 100,000.
Per 100,000. So in that scenario, in a $400,000 home, go down 60, then we're talking about $240.
Yeah, 270.
270.
And
go
then
down the
coming
first
back.
year, and then another 30, so we're now down to 300.
Yeah, sorry, 270 total
'Kay.
over the 2 years, and then asking to come back up 180.
Okay, so taxpayers overall save money in that scenario if we were able to pass a large bond.
Yeah, I mean, both of course, we're overall. I will note another factor here in this scenario 1. Not only do we lock in that $11 million of savings from accelerating these bonds, but you can see also that comparing these two, you see the blue, which is the current bonds, Here's just leaving them as they are, and here's after the refinancing. We've pushed those payments down substantially after 2024. That frees up space for the new bonds to be paid down even faster. That faster amortization on the new bonds between these two scenarios adds up to another $11 to $15 million in interest savings. So I would say scenario one, long-term, beyond just this refinancing, but also the ability to pay down future bonds faster while still maintaining a steady or declining tax rate, really is more like a $25+ million savings to voters in the long run.
Trustee Kofelt.
Thank you. And as I look at this too, and tell me if I'm correct, you know, right now we have a climate where money's relatively cheap. The economy's doing well, maybe not for everyone, but it's doing well. In scenario two, theoretically, we would be coming to people and asking for more money when who knows what the economy will look like in 2024. So by going with scenario one, the levy drops their cost, but it stays pretty steady from that point forward. We won't be going back to them to ask for more money, not knowing what the future holds with the economy.
Yeah, Madam Chair, trustees, Trustee Kofelt, we feel extremely confident, given the growth that's expected even next year, no matter what state the economy is in 2023, 2024, at this point we'd feel extremely confident under scenario one, you would not be asking anyone to raise their tax rate.
Yeah, but I want to be clear because we're talking two different things. The levy rate stays the same, but we still have to ask for a bond either way.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So we do have to ask for more money, and from a taxpayer standpoint, that's not always understood. Yep. So.
Right.
Any other questions? I think we're good. Is there any other discussion on this? I actually have one more question, Jonathan, if you can probably answer it for us, sorry. We talked a little bit about this, so I want to get it on record. Timing, because we talked about there's options in the timing. So what's the value of doing this today versus, like, what's the drop dead date we have to make this decision by?
Madam Chair, trustees, superintendent, I think some of the value you get is while we're still out for June 7th, right? So we have a month. Working now is things we know now, right? So as the market changes, you could get better, you could get worse, right? And so the value of that uncertainty versus moving our process now. Our drop dead date really is we have to certify in September, and so we have to back up from that date to make sure that we can get everything done in time for the certification to be able to happen when it comes before the board. And so is there a time available within now and the certification? Yes. But as we continue to delay things or choose to reevaluate things or however you want to look at it, that just adds a component of uncertainty, right? Is there anything else that you would add, Christian, Eric?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I remember. I'd actually like to ask board members on this because I think this is a big decision. And so before we get into the action, and because once we go off discussion on this, we don't come back to it. I'd like to kind of hear where you're at, because I think the decision we're making today is, do we give a potential, and it's a levy rate, so at the end of the day, a taxpayer may not see a reduction in their total taxes, but they would see a reduction in their levy rate. Do we do that today, or do we keep the levy rate consistent and pull the debt forward? So so I go just based on kind of what you see in the news around house values. I think it's a very real scenario that we could drop a levy rate and a taxpayer could see a flat or still an increase in overall taxes just based on the assessments and the values. That being said, I also could see a significant increase in their overall, a higher increase in their overall taxes if we try and keep the rate the same. So I'd like to kind of see where folks sit on that, because I know we've always done it one way, but I think we should always reassess kind of how we've done things and make sure that we're still, our world around us changes constantly, and just make sure that we're still all in alignment on the policies we've maintained is something we still want to go forward and do. I'm struggling with it, to be honest, so I'd like to hear where you guys are at.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start. I think we'd all like to see taxes go down, but we live in an area of rapid, massive growth, and we need for our bonds to continue to pass, and I mean, we're going to be reliant on them in the future. One of the things that we've heard from administration is one of the things that they market to help us pass these bonds is that we don't increase our levy rate. And if we don't do this, we could have a substantial increase in the levy rate, especially if we're going to talk about doing that 10-year long-term bond, which I do think is a good idea for us to talk about. So that would be my concern.
Trustee Kloppenstein.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. I would say that, I mean, Nick Miller hasn't steered us wrong so far, so. But I just want to say that I think anything to shock the system would potentially create political problems down the road. And I do see that if we let it go down too far and then we shock it to come back up, I think that's a challenge for us in trying to pass a new bond later on. And so it would be a concern for me. Here we are able to, in essence, save some money, but also keep things steady. And I think anything we can do to keep things steady means that we can pass what are obviously going to be needed bonds in the future. So it just provides stability to me.
Trustee Kofelt.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would agree with my two colleagues. My concern in scenario 2 would be that although you may have some short-term appreciation in a drop in a tax, the upside that comes later on money we know we're going to need could be significant and create a big hurdle for getting a bond passed that we'll need with the growth we're doing. Scenario 1, I think, provides us a much stabler platform for our taxpayers and meeting our needs with addressing the growth. So I like scenario 1.
I'll tell you why I'm struggling, because I'm concerned about Idahoans getting priced out of their own market, and the property taxes being a big portion of that. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't get priced out at some point anyways, but I think that's what I'm struggling with is the more that you can keep. I mean, we can't keep the assessed values from going up, but certainly the taxes on the assessed values, if they go down, that helps create some level of affordability. So I think that's what I'm struggling with.
Oh, did we go at the same time? I think it was the same time.
Trustee Kloppenstein.
I totally agree with you, and it's definitely a concern I've heard from Trustee Newhouse back in the day. You know, I mean, he was also very concerned about this. The reality is, though, and it's a reality he knew as well, that we can't. This market's going to do what the market's going to do. I mean, it's going to grow, and I just, if we try to guess that, we have no other options for building schools. Is what it comes down to, I guess, and that we have to realize that the only way, even if it does price people out of their homes, that's the result. That's not our issue. That's the issue of the state legislature, and I think we have to play the game the state legislature gave us. We have a responsibility to the kids in this district to make sure they have a place to go. And as it is right now, especially in the south area of our district, they don't have a place to go. So we're going to need that money in the future. And again, it goes back to, we have the need. We're kind of constrained by the very few tools we have. And it's just, it's a decision the legislature kind of made for us. Again, my 2 cents is what I'm basically passing on.
Trustee Kofelt?
Yeah, this is the only comment I was going to make on to go along with Trustee Kloppenstein's was, you know, we're handcuffed a bit as a school district because many of the cities and the municipalities and other districts around us, they have the ability to collect impact fees to help with this growth, and we don't. And so we're forced to rely on the bonds. And I'm with you, though. I am sensitive to the taxes, too, because sometimes I know agencies can get caught up in, hey, my levy's going down. Well, the reality is values are going up so much, the taxpayer doesn't really feel that. But I think scenario one is being responsible with the taxpayers' money. We're saving $11 million on bonds that we already have, and putting ourselves in a better position where the tax playing field, if you will remain level for those taxpayers. But I agree with you. I am sensitive to that too.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Superintendent Reynolds.
Madam Chair, trustees, I would love to have you have been in districts with me where this wasn't even feasible, and to end up trying to run any kind of a levy or a bond where we knew it was going to be a no vote just because of the burden on the taxpayers. So I would yield to our experts in the room, but just from a little school person's experiences in other districts that didn't have this opportunity, my encouragement would be to really consider this recommendation. I'm afraid I just worry that if we don't take the opportunity now, it could come back to haunt you later on.
Yeah, I think where I'm sitting at is it's about risk, right? And risk and reward. And so I think what we're saying is it's from a longer term risk, this recommendation is from a bonding perspective is lower risk to us from a passing of a bond and an increase in a levy rate. I weigh the other side of that risk with just families, that's all. Jonathan.
Madam Chair and trustees, I think the things to think about, if I may, to help, is that you're also going to, don't forget, we're going to see some reductions. And so not only are you going to see a reduction of $1 million, you're going to start to see as your levy rate continues to go down as the market rate goes up. And so I think you're going to see that taxpayers are going to see a reduction in their taxes over time, along with the savings that we're going to be able to generate. So if that just helps.
Yeah.
Anything else that you, and I know Eric's been itching to. He says
Eric,
it's
why didn't
so,
you raise your hand?
He says it's so much better than I do.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds, Eric Ehringer with Piper Sandler. I guess the point, and I understand your concern, and I wanted to kind of make it kind of clear what I would expect to happen here in terms of an individual's tax bill. Because we're talking about, with the scenario one, lowering the total levy amount by $10 million next year. So the district will collect $10 million less. So if there's no market value growth, that is immediate reduction in the amount that taxpayers will pay. There might be a scenario where someone's home value goes up 50%, and for some reason the way the tax rates work out, that drives an increase. But if you just think about it, you're going to collect $10 million less, and so that savings should get spread out among all the taxpayers. So that's sort of step one. Step two is the idea is to keep that bond levy at a fixed dollar amount of $30 million under that scenario. And that's the same amount that you'd look at in scenario 2, you'd have it drop and then go back up. But again, it's 10 million lower than what it is today. And as the market value goes up in the future from new construction, that's new taxpayers being added to the tax base that will help pay that 30 million. Rather than, because we're not talking about taking the 30 million to 40 million in the future, it's keeping it at 30 million. If the market values go up with no new construction, it's just the same people paying the same taxes, you're just going to be kind of, some people are going to be paying more, some people are going to be paying less, depending on how that assessment process works out. But 30 million, you know, that 10 million reduction is going to provide immediate tax relief just from that. And then as things grow from new construction, that's just more taxpayers paying in to help contribute to that 30 million, and existing taxpayers should see some reduction on this bond. So does that help clarify that issue a little bit?
Yeah, and it's not, you're not clear at all. You're very clear. What I think about is we're making an assumption that the assessed value stays the same in those models. And, you know, I just can, in the south zone, know that it's 100% increase right now in it might not be assessed value, but it's 100% increase in market value from where it was 2 years ago. So that's kind of what's, and you can't solve that, I know that.
Well, and Madam Chair, I mean, I would expect your market value go, you know, the district's market value to go up 25% next year. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised by that. But that's going to be that's going to drive a bigger reduction in the tax rate than just the dropping of the levy amount by 10 million. Plus that growth is going to drive the tax rate way down, because you're not asking for more money, you're actually asking for less money.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. You guys good with this one? Sheena, you good? Okay. Next up is math textbooks. And Dustin. Oh, you guys are pulling this bait and switch on me, huh? All right, well, now you have to introduce the big guns here.
Madam Chair, trustees, Superintendent Reynolds, I'm going to introduce Chris Stoker, who is our curriculum coordinator for math and science, and he's going to present to you our recommendation from the textbook committee on high school maths, for high school math textbooks.
Madam Chair, trustees, Dr. Reynolds, good to be with you tonight. Our committee started meeting near the beginning of the year. We had 9 parents, and let me just thank you for those parents you appointed to it. They were awesome and thoughtful and engaged in the process, and we were very thankful for their time. We had 16 teachers, 2 administrators. We met 8 times, over 400 collective hours evaluating resources in the group. And we also collected public comment for 2 weeks at 3 different school sites and online, which we hadn't done before, the online part, but circumstances required it. And it was good that we had that option. As a committee, before we started, we needed to develop a rubric as to what was important to us, and so we really looked at 3 different factors. The first of those were the effective math teaching practices, 8 of them by the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. We felt like 3 of them were important for adopting a textbook: implementing tasks that promote reasoning and problem solving, facilitating meaningful mathematical discourse with students, and building fluency from conceptual understanding. And the tasks really are kind of this real-world scenario problem that's specifically designed to help students understand highlight some ideas and to talk about those ideas with each other. And then the conceptual understanding is important, as we want them to start with understanding what they're doing, but then move into being able to have things memorized and solve them quickly without having to think deeply about it every single time. So that was one piece. The second piece is we wanted to really focus on the type of thinking that students needed to do. We could call this math habits of mind, or teacher speak, we would call them the standards for mathematical practice. Just things like finding patterns, making conjectures, those kind of things that are important takeaways for anyone who's in a math class. And then the third thing that we wanted to take into consideration was our vision statement document that we created last year. We did a book study with teachers, parents, and administrators, and tried to basically address the question of how do we help make math a better experience in high school, and how do we help make test scores go up in addition to that. And so we wanted to keep that in mind. This is kind of a long process, our vision statement here, but we wanted to keep that in mind. So we took all three of those things plus other suggestions, and we built a rubric out of those. We then took 5 textbook candidates. These were highly rated on EdReports for integrated mathematics like we use in our district. So we looked at college preparatory mathematics, Envision, Reveal, Agile Mind, and Carnegie Learning. And we had vendors present to us virtually, which was interesting, but we got through it fine, and it was good experience. We narrowed it down to 2, and then we had the public review and comment period that I had already mentioned. And from that process, the committee recommends college preparatory mathematics, or CPM. 75% of that committee voted for that, and it really came down to feeling like CPM had tasks that would support those things that were important, and that the other finalists also had tasks, but there weren't as many of them, and they didn't have the same depth to them as what we wanted. A couple of other things to consider here. For our recommendation, we feel like with one-to-one devices for students now, we're in kind of this unique spot we've never been in before with a textbook adoption, where we can provide more resources than we have before. So every student will have a book. It will be an e-book they can look at on their laptop, and then any student who also would like a physical book could have one of those as well. So to make that happen, our data shows that about 60% physical books would get, plus ebooks for those, and then 40% ebooks only would give us that right balance. 2 other points that I just want to highlight is CPM is very strong with teacher development, professional development. They really want it to work in the classrooms. They want to get kids more engaged in doing mathematics. So they provide 5 teacher training days each year for the first 3 years. They have optional online professional development for teachers as well. They provide 2 classroom visits from teacher leaders from CPM that give insight and feedback into how to help students learn math better. And then they also provide a mechanism for teachers that we hire new next year or the year after, whatever, to go through that same 3-year cycle of training, but from the year they enter our district. And the last piece is, because we have it in middle school, we have developed a lot of middle school experts in using it that can help us with professional development and help provide some consistency in our system from 6th all the way through graduation. The last piece, and I think we learned this from our parents that were on the committee, is that we really need to do a lot better job with parent communication of the resources that are available with CPM. So the things that we are going to do for sure is print a parent guide for each family that they'll get in the fall. This parent guide includes some notes from the chapter. It includes worked out examples and extra problems for families to give their kids at home with the answers to them as well. So that's a really good resource. We'll also have parent nights at each school in the fall, so parents get a feel for what it is like, because it's different than a lot of parents experience math when they were in school. We'll have some website resources. We have middle school help on our district website right now for CPM. We'll expand that to include high school. It also links to the CPM website, which has answers and hints to problems, which a lot of students find very helpful. And then we'll be facilitating monthly communication to families with parent tips as well for, what's going on in this unit that you should be aware of, and what are things you can do at home to help. So just in conclusion, I just wanted to thank those that were on our committee, teachers, administrators, and especially the parents who volunteered so many hours and were so thoughtful in the process over the last 3 months. And I will stand for questions.
Thank you. Trustee Kloppenstein.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mr. Stoker, thank you very much for going through this process. We've worked before and talked before, so I really appreciate your methodology and how you go about this. I was just curious if this plan had any disposables that we are committed to then buying in the future, like workbooks, printed material, things like that. I'm just wondering if there's any of the extra costs we have to think about.
Madam Chair, Trustee Klopfenstein, there are, I wouldn't say disposables, there are the parent guides, which are, I guess, a disposable. In the middle school, we printed those for the first year, and then we just sent out email links in the second, and third year, and that kind of got disrupted this year. This is the third year in middle school with it. We may certainly want to do these every year. I think that's one of the things we've definitely considered doing based on the feedback we got from the parents on the committee. We'll be buying some manipulatives, algebra tiles and hands-on things for the students to do math with or do little experiments with. Those, for the most part, are not consumable. You would just reuse those every year. So the really only consumable that comes to mind, it really would be the parent guides.
Trustee Ozuna.
One of my greatest moments as a West Ada trustee was approving the middle school math books, and I am equally excited, ecstatic that our high school students are getting a math book. I cannot thank you enough for everybody that was involved in making this happen. What is the dollar amount and for this purchase and the length of time of the contract for the ebook, just so we know?
Madam Chair, Trustee Ozuna, the purchase price is a little bit under $1 million. And it will be for 8 years, which I'll just add that it's a great price for 8 years. Compared to what we can get in other textbooks, we could never get. Usually it's 6 years, and usually you're like $1.3 million. And their CPM is changing their price structure, so we're kind of catching the last wave of the old structure.
Great. I have one other question that's not related to that. So I remember getting some feedback on this with middle school too, and I have received feedback with some concerns around how this works for kids that are in special education. And since this is largely around the group process, how does that work for the kids in special ed, and what extra services do they need to be successful with this?
Madam Chair, Trustee Ozuna, I think it's a great question because I think it's really important. How can we help our populations who struggle with math? And it's not just special ed, right? There's a lot of other kids that struggle with math for various reasons. There's a couple of things. One is the reading level of the CPM problems are designed 2 grade levels below what the class is in. So our 9th grade students in the 9th grade book will be looking at books that are a 7th grade reading level. So that's one piece that does help a little bit. A second piece is it's a lot more hands-on as a curriculum resource than kind of a traditional textbook. That tends to help people that struggle. And a third piece that comes to mind is that the group structure is flexible, and we found with groups that struggle, sometimes just doing pairs is the best way to have that student discourse, because a group of 4 is just a little bit too much for them to all handle, sometimes. And so the teacher needs to be strategic in what instructional strategies will help get the discourse that you want, but not have it be like a train wreck either, with the whole process. So those are the things that come to mind right off anyway.
And just one follow-up to that, is that covered in the training that our teachers are going to get? Because, this will be brand new to our high school math teachers.
I would say it's extensively covered. They're going to have 3 days of training in August where they will be the students. They will sit in the groups. They will they will have all the strategies used on them that you would then be using in your classroom. So they really get to experience it from the teacher point of view or the student point of view. And then they'll have a follow-up training in the fall semester and then one in the spring. And those strategies are highlighted at every one that I attended for middle school.
Thank you. Thank you. Trustee Buffy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so my brain is getting a little bit tired, so I do apologize. You may have covered this and I might have missed it, but well, first I want to say thank you so much, because I am almost as excited as Trustee Ozuna, because my daughter graduated high school a couple years ago, and that was the constant complaint I received from that child was, I do not have a math book to bring home, and it was pretty miserable for her. So I'm super excited about this, so I thank the committee for all their hard work. Coming from the public sector, I'm used to the least expensive responsive bidder getting the contract. So my question is, was the cost of the materials a weighing factor, or was it strictly just based on the educational value?
Madam Chair, Trustee Buffy, I think it was not a primary factor. What we wanted was, what's the best resource to help get kids engaged in math, to help them learn it at a higher level, and to help them like the experience better than many have liked it in years past. So I think that was our primary focus. We do like that CPM is a nonprofit, and so that brings their price point down because of that. But it was not the primary factor, no. But when we think about, like, okay, now we can buy more manipulatives and parent guides every year and those sorts of things, it is a nice bonus, I would say.
Thank you.
One quick question. What kind of outcomes did CPM share when they shared how their textbooks and their program impacted mathematical learning for students?
Madam Chair, when they shared their data, or what we saw in our district?
Both.
Yeah, when they came 3 years ago, we pulled data from around the state, and we didn't have a lot of middle school data to pull, but Rigby School District had done it, and they had brought on their 7th and 8th grade the first year, and their scores went up. So then the 6th grade jumped in the next year, and I think their scores went up about 15 points, if memory serves, over those 2 or 3 years when they first did it. Our scores in our first year, we went up in 8th grade. No, sorry, we stayed the same in 8th grade. We went up in 7th grade, and we dipped a little bit in 6th grade. So I would say it was kind of a mixed bag for us. But that was our first year, and typically implementation years are more challenging as you're kind of learning things. You know, last year we didn't get any data because of COVID coming in, and we were super frustrated about not seeing the results of year 2, because we felt really good about it. And you know, this year is who knows exactly how it'll end up. But that's kind of what we've seen.
I need you to set a little, thank you. I need you to set a little context for me. 15 basis points means what? Does it mean we get so when I think about our CPM, our CIP mathematical data around kind of kids at grade level, does that mean we saw a 15 percentage point increase in that many kids being at grade level, or give me some context to that?
Madam Chair, I should have clarified that. What I meant was that we were getting, that Rigby saw 15% more kids passing the ISAT with either proficient or advanced, and for us, 8th grade we had the same percentage pass it. 7th grade went up, I think 4%, and then 6th grade dropped, I think 3%.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I have a question, because we're hitting 9:30. And we have 3 agenda items here that don't have action on them tonight. And we have 2 after that do need action on them, besides the 2 that we just heard. running by the ISBA rule of nothing good gets decided after 10 p.m. I'm wondering if we want to delay the things that don't require action tonight or postpone the things that don't require action tonight and make sure we hear the things that do require action and get the actions done.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If with your permission, could I just double check on the policy? So the advanced opportunities, is that time sensitive?
No, it is not.
How about the suicide prevention, Dawn? Is that time sensitive? Do you need it right away? Yeah, I know it's just a reflection of. What did he say?
Both the advanced opportunities and suicide prevention, we need those in place for fall.
Yeah, I think that we were just trying to be sensitive to 3 readings, and so maybe if the board has a chance to review those documents and maybe consider 2 readings,
Okay.
that could help.
Okay.
But we don't need it for a handbook or anything like that. Okay. The federal funding plan, Jonathan, is that we can wait on that one? See how helpful we are?
I think ours is the policy review one, and I think we can wait on that one too.
We can wait. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's nothing there. I think number 7 is the one that we really need to have consideration.
Okay. So if do we need to amend, do we need to have action to do that, to amend the agenda, or can we just go ahead and, do we need a motion to postpone, I guess, is what I'm asking?
Madam Chair, Trustees, Superintendent Reynolds, I would think that we should have a motion to postpone them just to be on the good side.
Okay. So let me see if I can kind of give an idea of what a motion might look like. It would be to postpone discussion item 3, 4, 5, and 6, and action item 3 until a future meeting. So can I entertain a motion right now to do that? Okay. I would entertain a motion. Trustee Klopfenstein.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would move that we postpone discussion items 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then also action item number 3 until a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we postpone discussion item 3, 4, 5, 6, and action item 3 till a future meeting. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. Sorry for some of you having to be here all night and then not getting to present. Sorry about that. I'm hoping that getting out of here before 11 is some sort of consolation prize. So we have the last discussion item now on the updated agenda up, and that's bid number 111901. And I think we have to do a conference call for this one. So.
Call cannot be completed as dialed. Please consult your directory and call cannot be completed as dialed.
Let's go ahead and call them directly. Can we do that?
Why don't we take a quick 3 or 4 minute break while let Sherry get set up, and if anybody needs to use a restroom or get a drink, they can. Or eat a cookie. Okay, we're live. We're back from break, and we have a discussion item, bid number 111901, up on the docket. And Joe, maybe I would ask if you could kind of just give the context and background for what's different and why we even have this on the docket. So.
Yes, absolutely, Madam Chair. Thank you. Members of the board, Superintendent Reynolds. After we've been working on Hawaii High School now for about 41 months, and we are nearing the end. Nearing the end of the project, and we're at the point of our final bid package, which is Hawaii Roadway Package 2, bid 111901. I included in the board agenda kind of a chronology of that bid package. It was compiled by CM Company. We did a formal bid. We had the 2 legal notices. We had a pre-bid conference. CM Company reached out to 15 contractors, as they often do, for a bid package. And they do that to promote the bid and try to get competitive bids from local contractors who are qualified to do the work. They felt they had a couple of contractors interested in the bid who had made a verbal commitment to bid it, and then a couple who were considering it. We even extended the due date a little while longer to avoid another bid date with an agency that was in a project for similar work. Unfortunately, on May 5th, when the bids were due, we did not receive any bids. As you see in my memo, one of the contractors did not submit due to securing another contract, and the other did not bid due to the inability to locate a subcontractor. So in situations like this, Idaho code does allow, if no bids are received, the governing board may move ahead to procure the services without further competitive bidding procedures. In a normal situation, we would rebid a bid package like this. This is not a normal situation. It is, close to the middle of May. It is mostly pavement work. The summer paving projects are well underway for ACHD and Idaho Transportation Department. And we feel that a rebid would not be in our best interest. It would probably take about a month. And there's no guarantee that we would get a bid or 2 bids. And there's always a risk then that we might get 1 bid, but the bid might be very high if a contractor noted that we did not get any bids the first time around. So in this case, we'd like to try moving forward without the further competitive bidding procedures. CM Company would reach out to qualified contractors to secure a price, negotiate a price. We're not required to reach out to 1. We can reach out to several, and then we will bring the lowest price to the board for approval on May 25th. So our recommendation is to move forward without further competitive bidding. However, if the board does not feel comfortable doing that, we can certainly rebid the bid package. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Could you also outline just what motion you need from the board? Is that just to approve moving forward in a non-competitive bid format? Is that the motion you need?
Madam Chair, yes, that would be correct.
Okay. And then can you also tell us what the budget is kind of for this work?
Madam Chair, I can tell you that it's over $200,000 because it is a formal bid. I am reluctant to answer the question simply because we would not want to share that number with contractors. In other words, we don't want to do their homework for them and let them know what we estimate the cost of the work to be. We're also not required to provide that. That is an exemption in the public records law. So with your permission, I would not share that at this time.
Okay. I think that permission's granted if you needed it. I think the question that I had is if we go down the no bid path in such a time crunch that we're in, that you, it's a request more than anything, that you let us know if we go over what we originally thought we were going to have to do from a budget standpoint, because that's probably the main concern with the time crunch and the lack of competitiveness.
Madam Chair, certainly. When we receive a bid or we do secure a a contract to do the work, at that point, the cost estimate may be made public, what we felt it was going to cost.
Understand. I just don't, I think what the board needs to know is if our cost estimate is higher than we thought it would be, and by how much, because that competitiveness is always a concern. Is there any questions or discussion? Okay. We asked this to be out of the consent and into the full board because this is Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first time we've ever had this happen.
That is my understanding, yes. And talking to Mike Carruthers, our purchasing agent, we have no record that we've ever done this before.
Okay. So it's new for us, new territory. Yep. All right. Is there any, we have CM on the line too, in case anybody had any questions for them. All right. I think we're good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. With that, they all hung up, I think, I hope. We'll move into the action item. Jonathan or Mr. Gillen was gracious enough to provide a form of motion for everybody here for around the bond presentation and adoption of the bond resolution. So each trustee has that on their desk. And that's our first action item on the agenda. So I would open it up to entertain some motions. Trustee Kloppenstein.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would move that we have a resolution authorizing the issuance of and providing for the sale of general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2021 sales tax guarantee taxable of joint school district number 2, Ada and Canyon counties, state of Idaho, authorizing the manner of sale of the bonds, delegating authority to approve the terms, provisions, and sale of the bonds, and providing for related matters.
Thank you. Is there a second? Trustee Kofelt.
Madam Chair, I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the bond resolution as read. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. Next, we have the math textbook adoption. We're going to have to tease Mr. Stoker, Mr. Barrett. Where's our draft motion? No, I'm just kidding. It's
I have
late.
this one covered.
Oh, there you go. Is there any motions? Trustee Ozuna.
I move that we adopt the math textbook as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second? It's been moved by Trustee Ozuna and seconded by Trustee Buffy that we adopt the math textbook adoption recommendations as presented. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. And then last, we've skipped over action item number 3 and action item number 4, the Oahe High School roadway package number 2. Just to remind the board, we need a motion that we approve moving forward without a competitive bidding per Idaho Code 67-2805 2A8, Section 8. Is there a motion? Trustee Buffy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make a motion that we approve to move forward without further competitive bidding per Idaho Code 67-2805 2A8.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved by Trustee Buffy and seconded by Trustee Kloppenstein that we accept or adopt moving forward with without further competitive bidding. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. We have future agenda items up here, and maybe I can just talk to them. We originally had talked about wanting to have a policy review discussion today, and maybe putting some trustees with some staff to help develop some of these future policies. So we'll leave that for a future discussion, but just a heads up that these 2 policies will be coming before us, plus the ones that we delayed tonight. I think it'd be helpful if we already have drafts of those 2 policies for the board to get some copies of them. And so we just wanted to make the board aware of those 2 policies and that there were drafts available. And with that, we can move into item number 4.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. Non-debatable motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. We're